Call this meeting to order at September 9th, 2020 at 6 p.m. in the Great Hall. First, we will do a roll call. If you are here, please say here or present. Adagarla. Edvate. Anderson. Bender. Buma. Brown. Emery. Fahim. Grant. Gonzalez. Hayes. Hurley, Hovey. Klaptatauskas. Lau. Lewis. Lona. Ludwig. Here. Mass. Here. Pfeiffer. Simano. Here. Schulte. Here. Simonson. Here. Springer. Here. Stenzel. Samuel. Young. Okay. All right, so we have quorum. With that, Speaker Ludwig will lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. We will now move into our program for the evening. President Wendy Winterstein and Dr. Ramirez with the administration's COVID-19 response. If our presenters could approach the lectern.
Good evening. It's good to see all of you. Really appreciate the invitation to be here with you tonight, and want to begin by, first of all, thanking you all for your leadership in being part of student government and your commitment in what you do to support all of our students at Iowa State University. In a few minutes, I'll turn over the program to Dr. Alex Ramirez, who will talk about COVID-19 and our health and safety practices. But I want to begin with a few comments. This is really an extraordinary time for all of us at Iowa State University, and to all of our students. I appreciate the flexibility, the resiliency, and the commitment that they have brought to this fall semester. Clearly, the challenges that each of us face every day are much different than we ever anticipated having to experience. But that's what the COVID-19 time is about. I deeply appreciate the compassion and care that you provide to your fellow students, your leadership in helping to lift up the Cyclones Care campaign to all, because that truly is the way forward and the way that we can continue to have these types of experiences during this semester. So again, thank you for all you do. I'd like to begin in terms of our COVID presentation by reminding everyone that every Monday now we update the dashboard related to testing at Iowa State. So we are doing testing of individuals who are symptomatic or who have had exposure to individuals that are positive. And you can go to that dashboard and you can see that information every Monday afternoon. Has everybody been on the dashboard to take a look at that? I see some heads nodding. Here on Friday, you'll see a change on the dashboard as we start to post on Monday, Wednesday, and Fridays daily updates on testing numbers. So you'll see some kind of erratic numbers, but you also see a line that shows what is really kind of the norm across all those testing dates. This past week, we saw some decline in the positive rate that we reported from last week, but it's really not enough of a decline that we can step back and say that we've achieved what we need to achieve. Again, only by following our Cyclone Cares campaign can we truly begin to flatten the curve down to where it needs to be. So again, it was progress, but it's something that could be turned around very quickly if individuals don't follow the safety and health practices. We have just opened a new testing location at Johnny's in Hilton Coliseum. So that's a testing location that we estimate will be able to handle 500 tests per day. I believe you all know we're very blessed at Iowa State in that we have the veterinary diagnostic laboratory that is able to process samples in about 24-hour period. That's very unusual. That doesn't happen at most testing locations. So it makes testing much more real time. And it makes it much more valuable to us as a community. So individuals who test positive very quickly, a case management process can begin and contact tracing can begin. And then we know what individuals need to be isolating if they're positive for that 10-day period or be in quarantine for a 14-day period. But again, if we don't follow our practices, we won't be able to see those numbers to continue to decline. As we prepare for the first football game this weekend, it'll be really critical that everybody is thinking about what it means to take care of themselves and to take care of others. I believe you may have seen a note that went out to students today from Senior Vice President Toya Younger, really providing tips and ideas for how to celebrate the first Cyclone football of the season in a safe way, as well as what are the consequences for violating university policy in terms of social gatherings, either on or off campus. We have to take this seriously, and we need your help to accomplish that. We know we can still conduct business, we can still learn, we can still have fun, and we can do so while complying with the Cyclone Cares campaign. As student leaders, you play a critical role in demonstrating to other students and helping them understand the importance of being part of the team when it comes to how we address COVID-19. Now I'd like to turn things over to Dr. Alex Ramirez. Dr. Ramirez is a professor of veterinary diagnostic and preventive medicine in the College of Veterinary Medicine. He is an expert in infectious disease transmission, and he is serving as a faculty advisor, really a senior advisor, to Iowa State's COVID-19 public health team. He's joining us tonight to offer some science-based insight into the university's test results, our testing strategy, and other mitigation efforts. Dr. Ramirez.
Student leaders, President Winterstein, thank you for this opportunity to be here to talk to you a little bit about maybe some of the questions that you may have. I'll try to be brief because I think it's more important to try to answer your questions. But to give you a perspective, when I see numbers, I think of three things, right? First thing is, what do they really mean? Second of all is, okay, what's my risk? And then third, just as importantly, what can I do to mitigate or prevent exposure to the best I can? So I think with any number, you must recognize there's a numerator and denominator. So what do they really mean? Especially looking at the denominator, because we like to compare things, right? So we need to focus on what was the purpose of this testing. So I'm pleased to be part of a university that's decided to be proactive in testing. And the purpose of testing was specifically to identify positive individuals. So the first 2 weeks, the initial focus was those students moving into the dormitories as a way to establish a baseline for roughly maybe what we expected that prevalence or incidence of maybe people that might be shedding. Right after move-in, we changed our target. And our target was now we need to find those positives. So in other words, we have a large population, and instead of just sampling everyone and see what we get, we identified who are those who are most likely to be positive, which are obviously people with clinical signs, and then also those people who are exposed or confirmed to have been around someone who was positive. So then our intent is let's focus our resources on those who are likely to be positive so that we can pull them back and minimize the exposure on campus. So when you focus on those positives, what do you think happens to your ratio, your percent positives? It's going to go up. But it's not because the world's coming to an end, but it's because that's your purpose, that's your target. We need to keep on focusing on identifying those positives. It's hard to compare that percent positivity rate from a national level or even Story County because those are different populations. But we can kind of understand our population and make our interpretations. And we are finding those positives, and we are pulling them back to limit that exposure. So once I see those positivities, and you look at the total numbers, it's a small percentage of the student population, right? So then the concern is, what's my risk? So what do we know? Well, the CDC has very well-defined rules or categories of who is considered a high risk. Not everybody is considered a high risk, but obviously those people with immunosuppressed systems, immune systems, those people with chronic lung problems, they're at higher risk. And the university has been very proactive in making sure that those who are identified as high risk get the accommodations necessary to mitigate, whether they're faculty, whether they're employees, or students like yourself. There are ways to go through a process to make sure that you mitigate those risks when you know you're a high-risk category. The other thing that's very important is recognize that according to the CDC, exposure is defined as being within 6 feet, so less than 6 feet, okay, and closer or longer than 15 minutes. 15 minutes or longer. So being right next to somebody who's positive and being there for a longer period, 15 minutes, is what's needed to be considered an exposure. Again, that's a very important concept. To be considered exposed, you need to be next to somebody who's positive or confirmed positive. You have to be within 6 feet, and you have to be with them longer than 15 minutes. And that's important because if we're walking here or we walk by someone, that incidental crossing path is not really considered a risk. That risk is minimal, right? We can't never say zero because there's no way to prove the negative or the zero, but really that's not considered a risk. What we also try to do is try to put it in the perspective of other diseases, right? You can think about the traditional flu or influenza season. There are times before COVID where somebody had a little snotty nose or sneezing, right? That we're getting to that time, and we didn't evacuate the room. We just looked at them and say, hey, why don't you stand over there? I don't want to get sick, right? And that's what we've implemented in those classrooms. We've taken a lot of steps based on the guidance from the CDC on what are those things we can do to mitigate. We created distances between individuals. We created the mandatory face coverings. We created more washing, cleaning, disinfecting. All classrooms are cleaned daily. We created big lectures to be moved all online and just restrict the in-person experiences to those that are really necessary, such as having a meeting like this, right? It's important to be in person for some things because it's just not the same to be 100% online. And the university recognized and worked extensively to try to meet those demands of trying to limit the number of people in the classrooms, decrease that classroom capacity to 50%. To put it in perspective, one of the values we look at in medicine or veterinary medicine is what we call the reproductive rate or the transmissibility of a disease or a virus. And what that means is, on average, from one infected person, how many do you transmit it to? So for COVID, initially they were thinking somewhere between 1 and 7. More recent research suggests that maybe it's about 2, 2.5, maybe 3. A few maybe go a little higher than 3 in their estimates. It's not a perfect science. But let's say 2 to 3. So what that means is for each infected person, on average, they might infect 2 or 3 other individuals. Anytime it's greater than 1, that means the disease keeps on spreading, okay? But on the same hand, if you think about how many people you encounter in a day and think about they're only transmitting it to a few, it's not like you see someone and now you got it. But on the same hand, as President Winterstein has mentioned, that doesn't mean you can now go and get together and have big gatherings, because that transmission rate in smaller groups will then continue to exist. So we need to stop that transmission. So what are some of the things I can do to mitigate? Symptom tracker, great way to minimize or reevaluate my health every day. If I am not feeling good, don't go to class. We don't want to pass anything, whether it's COVID or something else, to our classmates. The other thing to recognize is you have a lot of control. Physical distancing. If somebody sits right next to you out in an area, you can move farther apart. Outside, there's less transmission because of air. So when you're walking by someone, if you're concerned, you can just walk around them, okay? If someone gets close to you, you can just tell them, stop, I'll take a few steps back. You can decide, I'm not going to that activity because there's too many people in that group. I'd rather have a smaller activity with less individuals. So there's some choices that you can do to help mitigate and control that spread of the virus. The dashboard is a great place. You can see some of those numbers. Again, just trying to understand what they mean and how they can kind of help you out in understanding risk is beneficial. So I think you have a lot of control over your ability to get exposed. I think the university has been very proactive with their testing to make sure they mitigate that and then make sure the university can remove as many positives as we can to decrease that risk for you. And hopefully we make it a good learning environment for everyone so that we can all keep on moving forward with the learning and the knowledge that can be shared from everyone. So with that, I think we would like to leave it open for any questions, any specifics that maybe you have that we could maybe address for you.
Right. So if any senators have questions for President Winterstein or Dr. Ramirez, please raise your placards. And, Senator Advait.
First of all, thank you so much for coming out here today. It's really good to know as a student that the administration is listening. Now, I've been reaching out to my constituents and students on campus through social media and so on, and they brought up a couple of questions that I'd like to ask. So the first is about randomized testing. It seems a lot of students are confused in this regard because the email sent out, I think 2 weeks ago, cited targeted testing being the reason for higher numbers, but then a lot of people said that they were not being tested after known exposure, and they had the impression that it was so the university wouldn't have to use tests on someone who's probably positive anyway. So, which exactly is it, is the question I got.
Go ahead.
Well, I'll just clarify the question. So individuals, are you referring to individuals who were contact traced?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, great. So it's my understanding that once an individual, and Alex will help me with this, but it's my understanding that once an individual is in quarantine, it's not necessarily that they immediately go into testing. Is this correct, Alex? And so, but they are monitored and watched, and actually a very low percent of individuals who are in quarantine become positive for COVID. And I think the numbers for this past week were right around 12%. Previously, they had been about 11%. Am I answering your question?
Yes, and just a follow-up question to that, are there any plans for randomized testing or any other mechanism to determine the true extent of the situation on campus?
You want to take that one? Could you hear that?
So could you repeat that question?
Are there any plans for randomized testing or any
Randomized.
other mechanism
Good
to
question.
determine the true extent of spread on campus?
Yes. All right. So, and one other point of clarification, if you look at the current CDC guidelines, and that's where a lot of confusion occurs, if you're not showing clinical signs, the guidelines say you don't have to test. Iowa State's approach continues to be, as long as we have tests available, they will get you in and test you, even if you don't have clinical signs. Some of the maybe miscommunication that may occur is the priority are those with clinical signs or those who are known, and they might tell you come back the next time, which some might interpret as you don't want to test me, but that's not the intent. As our capacity increases, we are exploring other options to how to increase that testing. Right now, our primary focus is make sure we get all those that have to be tested or that we should be tested higher risk first, but hopefully very soon we'll be able to increase that testing. Absolutely.
Gotcha. Thank you. Another question, what is the extent of the university's collaboration with state and county level officials? The reason I ask this is because Governor Reynolds, in a September 2 press conference, said that having 25,000 fans at a football game was perfectly safe. Less than 2 hours later, Director Pollard announced the cancellation of that plan. So what's the level of coordination in this regard?
So every Thursday night, we have team members that meet with the Story County representatives, so Story County Board of Supervisors, the Story County Department of Public Health staff. They are in regular communication with the Iowa Department of Public Health, with the State Hygienic Lab that coordinates all the testing, of which our veterinary diagnostic lab is part of. And so we are in very close contact with other individuals, both in the public health arena as well as in the leadership, such as the mayor and the city manager and all those individuals. And your particular question about the football decision, what was your question?
I guess I was just pointing out that Governor Reynolds at a press conference was pointing out that it was safe to have fans at the game, and less than 2 hours later, Director Pollard announced that it was not safe and they would be canceling the plan.
Correct. That's a correct assessment.
Okay, another question. I think I have some more time, right? Okay. As Dr. Ramirez correctly pointed out, I think ICU policy right now is if you're not feeling good, don't go to class. But a lot of the things I've heard from constituents is like, what is ICU policy to encourage professors to accommodate in this regard? They don't seem particularly protected. Even students that have been forced to quarantine by the ICU health team don't feel like they're really getting accommodations from professors. So is there any top-down policy planned in this regard?
There certainly is a policy through the provost office that faculty will make accommodations for individuals that are in quarantine or who are feeling sick or who are in isolation. And if a student doesn't believe that is happening, they should contact their academic advisor, or they could contact the dean of students or the provost or senior vice president Toya Younger and let someone know that they need assistance.
And does this also apply to people who just don't feel good but don't have...
Certainly, because we do not want people who are ill coming to class.
Okay, and one last thing for now. I know you've stated the university doesn't have any plans to go fully online this semester, but if something like that does have to happen, will students be sent home? A lot of people texted me and seemed to be confused about this.
So, at this point, we are still moving forward with our plans. We see that the transmission that's occurring in classes, we believe to be very low. And so we do not believe that there is a necessity to go fully online at this time.
Gotcha. Sounds good. Thank you. I yield.
Senator Kloptowskis.
Thank you both for being here. In regards to the policy in which students can face disciplinary action or expulsion over involvement in activities that violate the new COVID-19 policies, are there any exemptions for religious activities or protest and or petition?
That's a great question. So right now, I think that if you had a question specific to that, I'd be happy to take that question back to Toya Younger and get a clarification for you. But it's my understanding that it really, I don't have the policy in front of me, but it really is about, are you in a situation where you are gathered, you're not wearing your face covering, and that there is no room to do the physical distancing that is required. But we could get you some clarification, because you asked about religious.
Religious and then protest or petition.
Mm-hmm. So let me get back to you with a more specific answer, if that would be okay. But it's my understanding is that you are going to be in compliance if you're at a social gathering, if you're wearing your face covering, and that there is space for the physical distancing. So we know we've had situations where students have come together, packed in large numbers without face covering and no ability to physical distance. And that's what the policy is directed at. So, but I will follow up on that particular question.
I yield.
Thank you. Senator Fahim.
Hi. Okay, so jumping off a little bit from Chuck's question, the consequence on large gatherings happened about a week after 801 happened. And 801 happens pretty much every single year, the weekend before school starting. And so I just wanted to understand the reasoning behind that decision and why that penalty was not in place before 801, an event that we knew would happen, rather than a week afterwards.
Great question. It would be great to always have 20/20 vision about the future. But at the moment of time, we just didn't realize how bad it was going to be that weekend. Granted, there are problems every year, but we had hoped with our Cyclones Care campaign, with all the social media work that we had been doing, with the COVID being in place, that we would see a different outcome. And that simply didn't happen, and we started to become quite concerned about exposure and about the transmission of positive cases. And so very quickly we decided we had to take some additional action. So again, it'd be great to have the kind of perfect vision, but when you're working in real time, seeing real things happen, you truly have to respond in that kind of time.
Thank you. I have a few more questions. So I was wondering if you could clarify some of the contact tracing. I just want to know more about the scope of contact tracing, kind of the timeline from both past and going forward.
Again, on our COVID webpage, contact tracing would be well outlined for you. I'm not the expert in contact tracing, but it would be on that page. But it's my understanding when we have things working as perfectly as they can on any given day, in very short order, once an individual is determined to be positive, a case management effort begins to work with that positive individual, get the names of contacts, and then for those contacts to start to be contacted. But there is a nice description about how all that flows and how all that works out. One thing to remember, again, that makes Iowa State very special in all of this is the 24-hour turnaround time on the test result. You don't get that kind of turnaround time in most of the testing that's available publicly. And so we're ahead of the game with the way that we are able to use the veterinary diagnostic laboratory.
With the spike in cases that we had seen recently, was there any changes to the contact tracing policy? And also, if this is just something that you would like us to refer to the website to, I can understand that as well.
I'm sorry, the last part.
My bad. I just wanted to see with the spike in cases that we saw about last week, if there was any changes to the contact tracing policy, if it was ramped up in some sort of way. And again, if you want to refer to the website, I understand that too.
No, I can address that. Thank you. Again, I'm not in charge directly of that. There are just a lot of things going on any given day. So when we saw the spike in cases, we immediately began a conversation that there needed to be more automation in the process. One, automation reduces errors, and so automation is part of what's happening now in both notifications. So I think positive cases now are going out through Access Plus. And then also it can be used even to reach out to individuals who are being contact traced so that they see what they are going to be asked in the process. So we did in fact ramp up pretty rapidly with the spike in cases and brought more power to bear through additional individuals that were redirected to contact tracing. Does that answer your question?
Yes, it does.
Okay.
So I was wondering
And
if you
Senator, sorry, you have about 23 seconds left on your first speaking privilege.
can I
so-
still ask a question?
Yeah, you could use your second speaking privilege back to back if you would like.
Sure, let's do that.
All right, you got it.
Okay. Can you talk a little bit more about the funds that the university allocated for the COVID response, with the additional masks, face shields, the additional testing, the bus dividers for drivers? I was just wondering where those funds came from, how were they allocated throughout the university?
I really couldn't give you a total number on that. I would be making a guess. So we could give you a more comprehensive response to that would be more accurate than the guesses I could provide you tonight.
Where would I receive that comprehensive response?
I would be happy to add that to my follow-up actions.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
And then, so you had stated that you sampled the students coming into the Department of Residence first to gain a baseline, and then moved on to targeted sampling. I was wondering why you would choose the Department of Residence, since their move-in time was 2 weeks after August 1st, which is when most people are moving in. I understand that, that's within house, but why leave those 2 weeks for students to mingle and spread the virus as they please?
Great. Alex, you want to take that?
So yes, good question. So one of the things that was thought in that process was, who can we target that's reasonable? One of the advantages of, I don't mean target, but one of the advantages about working with those in the residence halls is that the university had a lot more control over when those students move in, how we could do some of those setups. When you look at housing outside of that, it becomes a lot more complex in trying to design something that was efficient. So the idea was that's a more random sample, and if we work with that particular group, we would gather some of the information that would help guide us in a more efficient way for the others.
Thank you. I yield my time.
Thank you. Senator Young.
Thank you both for coming and speaking to us tonight. I know that we all really appreciate having a chance to ask questions. My first question is regarding your policy on student behavior. Obviously, there have been and are ongoing problems with student behavior off of campus. When planning for this semester, what behavioral psychologists were consulted about the risks the young adults pose for transmission, and what did they say?
Could you repeat your question? I'm sorry.
Sorry, I'll try to speak up. Regarding your policy on student behavior, obviously there have been and are ongoing problems with student behavior off of campus. When planning for this semester, what behavioral psychologists were consulted about the risks that young adults pose for transmission, and what did they say?
So we did, in fact, have individuals, faculty involved from different departments that work in psychology and sociology, help us work on the Cyclones Care campaign. And so that was the role that they played in helping to develop that campaign.
I was wondering if you could touch more on some of the insight that they brought to those meetings.
Actually, I cannot, since I was not involved in that process.
Okay, thank you. My following question is regarding the same policy. Have any students been suspended under the new policy that's in place?
There have been students that have been brought up on conduct, but I cannot tell you what the particular actions have that have been taken.
Thank you. My final question is, as you have explained, the university is taking many steps to prevent the spread of COVID in classrooms and university spaces, but what do you believe the university's role is in protecting the members of the Ames community, and what are you actively doing to prevent the spread of COVID in the community?
So I believe it's every one of ours individual responsibility to prevent the spread of COVID. So every single one of us wearing our face covering whenever we're out and about, showing that we believe in the city's recent mask mandate, that when we walk into a store, we have our mask on, that we're washing our hands, that we're maintaining physical distance, is every one of ours responsibility. The university cannot create an environment that is perfect, but each of us together can create an environment that really is very, very low in terms of risk.
To follow up, is the university providing the community with any sort of testing or resources for positive cases that may have been caused by the student body?
No.
Thank you.
Senator Emery.
Hi, thank you both for being here. I had a question for President Winterstein. It's no secret that the university is facing a lot of financial difficulties. So kind of two questions to go off that. You took a 1-year 10% pay cut this year. How did you decide that that was a sufficient amount to take? And then second, you are under a deferred payment plan until 2023, and that's about $1 million. So if the financial situation doesn't improve, are you gonna make any changes to that plan or anything?
So I decided that I needed to make some change to my salary, really as a good faith effort to realize that we are having financial changes. But the reality is, as we deal with our budget, what I do with my salary is a very small part of that. So it was really standing up and being part of the issue. As we go forward, and as we look at what our financial challenges are, then I will make perhaps a different decision. And unfortunately, there may have to be a different decision made for other individuals as well. It just depends on what happens as we go forward.
Thank you, I yield.
Senator Schulte.
Hi, thank you so much for being here. So as of August 20th, I know that we had 44% of classes had some sort of in-person component. Have we seen that number decrease, and to what approximately do we know that number to be?
So we know that there have been some additional declines in in-person because we have said to everyone, we've said to faculty and we've said to students that if you choose not to be in the classroom, that we will accommodate that choice. And so there has been a decline, but I couldn't give you the exact number. I would just hate to guess, but I don't think it's a significant decline.
Thank you, I yield.
And Senator Schulte, we actually asked Provost Workert that about 2 hours ago,
Oh,
so
great.
after the meeting, I can let you know what it is.
Great.
Thank you. Senator Ludwig.
Alex, I'm sorry.
Yeah, so I just got a couple kind of broad policy questions. I think you've touched on them a little bit, but I'd just like to maybe get some clear answers. So first, could you describe the role that the voices of the Ames community leaders play in broader COVID-19 policies that the university applies to our campus?
So are you asking me what the role Ames community leaders play and how the university sets its policies?
Yes.
Great. So again, we meet regularly with the university community to talk about issues. I meet regularly with the mayor and the city manager. We share with them what we are planning to do, but I don't see that they directly are influencing or telling us what our policy should be, if that's your question.
Yes, I was asking the question because obviously the things that happen on this campus have effects off of this campus, and so I was curious to what extent they were being involved in the discussions. Moving on though, I know you've stated that you don't believe the university will go online, but should the university go online, what plans do you have ready to support students and faculty for the remainder of the semester?
Could you be more specific on what your concern might be?
Just supports for resources for students to, succeed in their coursework and their studies, and faculty to distribute those resources. Because I know that a lot of students struggled in the spring semester with the transition online.
Right. So the spring semester, what a shock, right? And in a week's period of time, we moved all of our courses online. Right thing to do at that time. Your question really feeds right back into where we are in terms of our decision, and that is that there are so many specific educational opportunities that we think would be lost if we had to go all online, that we hope we can continue to maintain those, because we think it's very difficult, especially for our laboratories, our studios, the College of Veterinary Medicine's educational program, to do that in an online capacity. So our plans really are to see if we can't settle in here. Can we have our students appropriately behave this coming weekend? Can we see an increased use of face masks, not only on campus, but across the community? And can we start to get the curve flattened? So that's the focus that I'm going to continue to have at this time.
Okay, yeah, I think that's the right focus. Doing what we can to stay on campus is very important. Is there a sort of threshold or marker that you're looking for that would indicate that it is no longer safe to stay on campus?
So we have a set of metrics that we look at. We look at, again, what kind of transmission do we believe might be happening in the classroom. Right now, we don't see an indication that we see only very limited, very low transmission in classes. So that really gives us the confidence to say that we can continue to do that. Just like we're continuing to meet here in person for student government. So until we start seeing some data that would tell us that has become a much more risky environment, then I really think that's the most critical issue. Another criteria that we constantly monitor is absenteeism due to COVID. So if we would see our instructors, our faculty start to be absent because of illness, then that would be another factor that we would look at. But again, we're seeing very, very low positive cases in our faculty and staff at this time. So significant absenteeism isn't creating an issue for online courses at this time. Alex, would you want to add anything, or am I hitting?
No, I think that's true.
Okay.
Okay, I yield my time. I will move to add Senators Pfeiffer, Stenzel, and Adegarla to the roll.
Is there any objection? Okay, and the senators are added to the roll. With that, Senator Pfeiffer.
Thank you. Thank you both for coming today. I would like to ask Dr. Ramirez a few questions about the details of COVID transmission. So, based on your extensive experience with infectious diseases, does it make sense to disperse a fairly large population with a higher than average infection rate across the country to other populations for the sake of health and safety in the United States?
Great question. So that's, excuse me, that is one of the things that as we continue to explore is that risk, right? Some people are like, let's shut down. But the concern is if we shut down, where do these students then go, right? And that's a big risk, not only from that perspective, but also where they go, what resources do they have to continue that support for learning, right? And especially if we look at our underrepresented population, once we send them out there, they'll be even in a higher disadvantage because of that. So the reason there's no metrics is because we take this very serious, that moving online is not something you just make up a number and say, well, I promise, so now I got to do it, without understanding the consequences of such a rough decision. So the plan is to look at a lot of metrics, and they're being looked at on a daily basis, so that when we do see something where we say, you know, this is not safe for our students, then we pull the plug at that time. But where that metric is, it is hard to come up with that because nobody's been through that right now. So we don't know, and it's too serious of a decision to just pull and then create what we call those unintended consequences.
Thank you. Just one follow-up question. Currently, as it stands now, is there any plan to go online or send students home from the dorms?
Not at this time.
Okay, thank you. I yield my time.
Thank you. Senator Mass.
Thank you. So first I would like to begin, thank you to both of you for all the work that you've put into this. Obviously, this is not something any of us expected would be happening at the beginning of spring semester, and it's a lot. I'm sure that you've had to be rolling with the punches and, you know, making changes as they are necessary. So I want to thank you both for all the work and time that's gone into that. To sort of go along with that, I understand obviously a lot of the policy decisions being made right now are how do we get to the end of the week, not how do we get to next semester. But especially now too, as we continue to hear more and more about vaccinations and those sort of things developing from the CDC, has the university started conversations about what does vaccination dispersal start to look like if one is able to come about by the end of the year?
So what I can tell you, there is already discussion on, even today there was some discussion about when this vaccine arrives, do we have some ultra low freezers where we can store it? So we are already working on that, recognizing that that might be down the road. So absolutely, a lot of those discussions are currently going on, anticipating, and again, we don't know the date or when, but we're getting ready.
Sure.
I actually was in a conversation on this too, just a discussion about how many hypodermic needles to order. So, you know, you think about the supply chain that we've needed to just live through the COVID and to do the testing we're doing. So there's a big supply chain associated with delivering vaccines as well, so.
Sure, certainly. And the other part too that I kind of wanted to ask questions about too are a lot of students are starting to look at, okay, what does the spring look like? And the university so far has not issued any guidance on what changes might look like to scheduling or anything along those lines. So especially students are starting to look at a 2-week-long Christmas break of sorts, you know, a lot of students are starting to wonder what does it look like to come back from that.
Right. So we've been having conversations with the leadership of student government, and I think in the very near future, we will have an announcement related to the spring semester calendar.
Sure. Certainly. And then the other part too that I wanted to address, obviously this semester has been very different. I'm in my senior year, so you know, I know what Iowa State, a normal year, has kind of looked like. Especially for freshmen, who, you know, this is their first taste of Iowa State. They're getting a very different, you know, what does this look like? And I kind of just wanted to ask the question, you know, what is the university doing to try and, you know, promote, you know, regular activities of a sort? Obviously, they can't look the same as normal, but, you know, we look at things like homecoming, you know, like, are there safe ways to have some sort of, you know, reverse parade or, you know, at least some of that excitement, you know, that we get Because I do worry, a lot of what people remember and they treasure for years later about what Iowa State is kind of needs to look different. But I think it's valuable that we continue to try and make some of those things happen in safe ways.
I couldn't agree more. We had the last half of the spring semester be very difficult. Summer really as well. A lot of students had internships or co-ops that weren't able to go on like they had hoped. Our study abroad program essentially has been stopped. So a lot of things have had to be changed to allow us to just even start to safely re-engage. I know that there are plans related to homecoming, but I haven't seen them, so I can't give you an answer to that. I also know that Senior Vice President Toya Younger and the Division of Student Affairs are talking all the time about how do they support students, give them special opportunities, and I think her division thinks about this every day. And so if you have ideas, if student government has thoughts on this, I know that Toya Younger, Senior VP Toya, would love to hear any feedback, because you're right. It's not a normal college experience.
Certainly. All right. Well, thank you both for that. I've had a little bit of a taste of what this has had to look like managing 100 men in a fraternity, but it's certainly nothing compared to the work that you guys have had to put into 36,000 students, so thank you all. I yield.
Thank you, Senator Mass. Senator Hayes.
Hi. Again, I just want to reiterate my thanks for you being here and talking through all this. So I also just had a couple questions from some of my constituents that I wanted to ask you about. And so the first one being, with the number of activities that are able or that are unable to go on this semester, I think it's important for the university to encourage and promote a lot of the activities which are still able to be pursued. And part of that is through the maintaining of a lot of the outdoor facilities and amenities. And I think a big concern, which a couple of people have brought up to me, is that like the university disc golf course, for example, seems to be overgrown, and it's growing in popularity. And I think that it's something which, and so I'm wondering, is there any plans or has there been talks about maintaining current outdoor facilities to promote these sort of activities?
Did you mention the golf course?
The disc golf course in
Disc,
particular.
okay. Sorry. Okay. Let me check on that for you to see what, excellent. Alex, sorry.
Yes. So yeah, precisely for the same mental health and those discussions, those have been going on. I can tell you there's other institutions that their approach for safety has been to take down all the nets around any location so that students don't have access to that, and that has not been Iowa State's approach. What we're trying to do is how do we provide some constraints to keep people safe, but yet get them outside while we can. So currently working on maybe what that size of groups would be, because obviously if you get 100 people, then altogether that's not going to be good. But we're trying to figure out where could we feel safe enough to give a parameter so that there is, whether it's 10 or 20 or whatever we can get in guidance to allow those type of things more freely, especially right now while the weather, well, not this week, but when the weather does allow for those things.
Gotcha, thank you. And so again, also just to follow up on something else. So Dr. Ramirez, you were talking about some of the activities which are more required to be in person, such as this meeting here today. And so when in regards to the enforcement of COVID safe policies, I see multiple people here today which are not 6 feet apart, and we've been sitting together for probably close to an hour now, and that just seems mildly hypocritical. And so along with that, as well as just individuals on campus who openly walk around without masks, just on the sidewalks, and there may be ways to avoid them, but if you're coming down the strip between the library and the hub, for example, there's not much space to really walk around because there's guide rails. And so just in many ways, there's not really people there to monitor these situations. And so how do you foresee that this policy to enforce these guidelines is being held up to the standard which would help students remain safe?
Yes, good question. Do you want- So if you look at the data in Europe, actually the CDC in Europe recommends 1 meter separation, which is a little bit under, it's a little bit over 3 feet. Several countries in Europe, that was their guidance, is not 6 feet, but 1 meter. Other countries in Europe used 1.5 meters. Germany used 1.5 meters. In the US, we're sticking to not quite 2 meters, 1.8 meters or 6 feet. So the idea is the closer you are, the higher the risk. 1 meter seems to give you the most protection, so that's why we use that every other seat. Trying to keep 6 feet gives you additional protection, but it also is from a quarantine standpoint. So the current CDC guidelines would require that if somebody's closer to you than 6 feet, they would be under quarantine, right? So we could spread out more, but when you balance that spreading out with some of the risk and capacity, the balance has been keep people safe by keeping at least a seat in. That's the greatest safety. And then currently we're working on the classroom to try to spread students out even more as much as we can to minimize not so much the risk of exposure, but that quarantine that might go with a positive.
Gotcha.
Senator, you have about 20 seconds left on your first privilege. If you want to
Gotcha.
keep going and use your second, you can do that.
Yes, please. And so just one more question before I end my time. But there's clearly like some sort of financial turn which we expect the university to take going forward. And so like in the long run, how are there like financial recovery plans so that like student activities and student life and funding for a lot of the things which make Iowa State special, like the amount of clubs which we have, like how are those clubs and activities going to be maintained and make sure that they don't take a permanent hit on the future of Iowa State's community?
Certainly. So as we have worked on budget decisions over the last year, and certainly the budget decisions we're working on right now, we're always thinking about what the core is. What do we absolutely have to have for Iowa State University to continue on with its international reputation, with the education, research, and extension missions that we have, and in that, how we support our students. So students are always at the top of the list, and that means these out-of-classroom experiences that truly does make Iowa State special, those experiences are going to still be there. So we are not going to make decisions that take away what really is Iowa State University.
Definitely. I appreciate that. And just sort of follow up on that, can I ask like who was involved in the decision-making for that process?
So as we look at budget reductions, so every senior VP receives a budget reduction target, and then they are given the authority to allocate those out in differential ways. And I would suggest that in almost every unit, there's a student advisory group of some kind that is in conversations. So I used to be a dean, and in my college, we had a student group that was made up of senators as well as other students that filled out this advisory committee. We talked to them about budgets. We talked to them about program. We talked to them about everything we did in the college. And I think that's pretty common across the university. And so I think there's a voice out there through students. There's also a voice in terms of the interactions that I, the provost, senior vice president, Toya Younger, has with the leadership of student government on a fairly regular basis.
Definitely, I appreciate that a lot, especially with student representation. Thank you, and with that, I yield my time.
Thank you.
Thank you. Vice Speaker Gonzalez.
Hi, thank you. I'm over here. I'll stand. That's okay. Yeah, thank you guys so much for coming. I know it's a lot to take out of your busy plans, but I know the students really appreciate and anticipate getting a chance to ask questions. So I'll just go right into it. So I know students have spoken out about being frustrated with, being the ones to do the Cyclones Care campaign and being the ones to follow these protocols while, in the age of social media, watching others violate these protocols. So is there a resource or some kind of reporting system for these students who see these acts being committed?
So to date, several things have happened. The primary individuals that have been brought up on conduct charges, it has occurred because of their interaction with the Ames Police Department. And so that's been a very formal process. But we are also now receiving information directly from students who see a violation occurring. And then that's being handled again through the legal office and through the senior vice president's office and the dean of students. It's always a delicate thing when you get a report in a non-official capacity. So we haven't set that up and relying primarily again on citations from the police department.
Okay, awesome. And I would be more than happy to speak with either of you about how we can get something like that up and running. And so I digress to my second question. God forbid, this situation gets worse, but has the administration talked about what a worst case scenario would look like into sending our students having to move completely online? And if not, but go ahead.
It is an important question, and as Dr. Ramirez and I have talked tonight, I think we've referenced that we look at a number of different metrics. What we're seeing in terms of transmission, or really very little transmission in the classroom, looking at absenteeism, looking at incidence of the disease in faculty and staff. Those are all examples of the metrics that we look at, and as Dr. Ramirez said, look at daily. And so is there, as Dr. Ramirez says, there's not a particular number that is associated with any of those, because it is a very complex analysis. But we will keep monitoring all of that, and that will guide us as we go forward.
Okay, awesome. And then, as you said, those numbers will guide you. But here at Student Government, we are the voices of the student body. And as so, next week, we'll be seeing a bill that will be supporting that the student body move completely online. So my kind of question with that is, how seriously would the ISU administration take into consideration that resolution if passed by the student government body?
We always take very seriously any resolution that the student government passes. And so if in fact you would pass that, we would take that under consideration.
Awesome. I really appreciate your guys' time. Thank you so much. I yield.
Senator Buma.
Hello.
Hello.
Thank you guys for being here this Wednesday. Hopefully you guys are having a great evening. Anyways, you mentioned that in the spring semester, the school had to move online within a week's time, and a lot of students that I know, classmates and others, mentioned it was a very rough transition. And I understand that you wish to focus on trying to make an in-person school right now as low risk as possible, but is there no team or committee attempting to create a backup plan to make the transition to online semester more efficient and smoother? So in the unfortunate situation that we are forced to go online, we won't make the same mistakes as we did spring semester?
Well, first of all, I would disagree with you about mistakes made in the spring semester. So I really think that all of us, all of you, our faculty and staff, did a heroic job of having a week to move classes online. There are great stories of success that occurred. So I'll disagree with you about the mistakes that were made. So as we planned for the start of the fall semester, all faculty understood that there might be the reality of having to move online, and that they would have to have that in their preparation in case it was required.
So it's mostly based off the discretion of each faculty member?
As we talked about earlier, it's always been at the discretion of individual faculty, instructors, and students to choose if they would like to be online. And I think that's been one of the reasons why we have had success so far in the semester. The commitment of our faculty who had classes that they thought were critically important for online delivery, that they were still able to do that, and to do that in a low-risk manner.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Senator Young.
Hi, I have a following veterinary medicine specific question, so maybe Dr. Ramirez would be best to answer this. In the case that our environment is deemed unsafe due to student behavior off of campus, would policies made for moving the undergraduate colleges online be extended to vet med, a college that depends on in-person labs for effective learning?
So I think one of the advantages of Iowa State is they do look at everything independently rather than just blanket everything. So the plan is, if there are groups that can continue, that's the plan. If the vet med team doesn't behave and they start creating an environment that's unsafe for the team at vet med, then absolutely, they would be under the same guidelines as any other undergraduate student.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Senator Springer.
Hi, I know Senator Gonzalez asked a similar question, and Senator Hayes brought this up too, but I wasn't, I didn't catch your direct answer to this. So you said that most of the students that you've had discussions with about conduct not meeting your policies have been through the ISU Police Department or through student self-reporting. I guess I have a bit of a problem with it becoming other students' jobs to report students that are breaking these policies. And I feel like it should be the university's job to enforce that. And I have also noticed, along with many constituents who have reached out to me, that there are quite a few students that are walking around Central Campus in big groups without face masks. So I guess my question is, like, as the university enforcing this policy, how are you enforcing it?
So again, we're concerned about situations where people cannot physically distant and they are not wearing their face coverings. And so we, like any policy, cannot be following each student around to see if they're going to be in compliance or not. And so we do our very best to really address the most egregious situation. And that's what we're going to continue to do. So it's a terrible analogy, but I'll use it anyway. If you're driving down the road speeding, some people will get caught and some people won't. And that's typically how things will work. Don't have a better answer for you, but we do think the presence of the policy and the fact that we are taking action against students that have been cited for their behavior in these social gatherings is going to help us reduce the number of those very, very, very unfortunate social gatherings that have occurred.
Thank you. Just like a slight follow-up question, something that Senator Gonzalez also brought up was a student reporting system. Is that something that you would consider creating?
That would really have to be seriously talked about here at student government and also with our Senior Vice President for Student Affairs, Toya Younger, and with the University Legal Counsel.
Sure, okay. Thank you, I yield.
Senator Lona.
Hi, so I wanted to ask, what is the criteria for professors to hold classes in person? Because it seems as though there's discrepancies between each of the colleges as to what classes have a need to be in person or not.
Exactly, and that's because we give professors the choice. So it really is up to the individual choice of the faculty member.
Okay, I feel like my constituents have had problems with that just because as students, it's really hard to be the one to approach your professor and ask on behalf of students as a single person to move classes online. Do you understand what I'm saying?
No, could you repeat that?
So I'm just saying, and speaking of behalf of, if we're having if it's up to the discretion of the professors, and if students aren't comfortable with that, it's going to be hard for students to speak up for that, just because you know that power dynamic.
So again, students have the choice to be totally online as well.
Okay. And another question, what policies have been set in place in regards to students living in Greek housing?
So we have an office of what I'll call is Greek life. That's not the right title, but it is close. And that office works very closely with our sororities and fraternities. Dean Sharon Evans, Billy Bolton have been meeting weekly with our sororities and fraternities to talk about policies, to work with them on assistance they might need. So it really is a partnership. We don't have direct authority over sororities and fraternities, but we have a lot of ability to set policies, and again, individuals that fail to follow policies have a certain amount of, they can again be under a conduct policy and other actions by the university.
Thank you, I yield my time.
Thank you. Senator Advait.
Hello again. I'll try to keep this short. I know you spoke about, I know you said you were talking with student government leadership about spring semester. What's the university's tone on giving more forward notice of things to students? Because I know, for example, especially with international students, they need more notice for classes and the mode of instruction and whether they need to be on campus. I believe this semester that was finalized around August 3. But if you're an international student, that leaves you with two choices. You either come here and then you have to spend $6,000 or so in residence that you don't need, or at the last minute you learn that you have to be on campus and then you need to spend like $1,500 on a last minute plane ticket. So, yeah. What's the university's tone on that?
So again, it's September 9th. I think we'll have an announcement about the spring semester calendar very shortly. And I certainly apologize for any issues that might have arisen as we develop the fall semester calendar.
And I understand this was completely unprecedented, so I don't mean to.
No, but it's, we say it over and over again, unprecedented times, decisions that have never been made before, so, yeah.
Right, and I guess this is a question more for Dr. Ramirez. Yeah. If more testing capacity is available, are there any plans to go to a regular schedule? I have friends at other campuses, example, one specifically, the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign. They get tested twice every week if they so much as want to be present in campus spaces. Is there anything similar being developed at LSU?
Thank you. Very good question. So again, one of our challenges is we don't have what we call a closed herd, and I apologize but the reality is because many of us and even students might live with someone else who is not associated with the university, there's constant exposure. NPR announced, I think it was yesterday, University of Illinois that you mentioned, they're spending $1 million a week in testing. If you go to their website, you will see that they actually have more positive cases than we do. So even though they're doing this extensive testing, when you look at exposure to students and all that, honestly, I'm not sure that that's working. It sounds good, and yes, they are doing the same, removing those students, but our system is catching our students quicker, simpler, without having to do that mandatory process. One of the other things that's logistically complicated is the saliva test which they're using. In Iowa, it's not an approved test. So for the FDA, it's not even approved at the state level. Each diagnostic lab has to undergo the testing for the test as well as the sample type, which takes a lot of time and resources to do that. So we feel that in our situation, our targeting testing is a more efficient way to get what we need. And as our testing capabilities increase, we'll also have the opportunity to expand that to the areas where we see the greatest return on that money. Because ultimately is, what will you do with those results? And we want to try to isolate, but so far, our program's working probably just as good without spending the huge amount of resources that other institutions are spending.
Thank you. That answers my question perfectly. Again, I understand these are unprecedented circumstances, and you guys are doing the best you can. And yeah, just thank you for everything you do. I yield.
Great. Are there any further questions from senators? Okay. Any closing comments from our presenters?
No, again, we appreciate this opportunity. I do feel the university is very open to help answer student questions. We're here for students. And I also think it's important you as leaders, you have an impact on the rest of the student population, right? You can help keep that decision of whether we need to go online or not by helping to promote the proper actions, right? If people do the right things, we can keep that infectivity rate and we can continue doing the things we want in person. If we don't follow those guidelines, then we'll have to deal with those consequences. So it's important you as leaders to help guide our students and our faculty to do the right thing, but especially your colleagues, because they're more likely to probably listen to you than some of us, so that we keep on doing the right thing for everybody and protect everyone.
I want to thank everyone for the opportunity to come tonight and have this discussion. And certainly I'll be following up on some of the specific questions for additional information and get that to you, Jacob. Is that okay? And please don't hesitate. If there are more questions that we can answer, we'd be happy to hear about those and provide that information to you. Again, a deep thanks for the leadership you provide for all of our students and for the university as a whole. I also want to thank Dr. Alex Ramirez for the work that he's been doing since last summer and helping us develop our testing program, and as he continues to be an advisor to the health team here at Iowa State University. So great to see all of you. Really appreciate the opportunity to visit with you tonight. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you again. We will move on to open forum. Open forum is a time for discussion for issues relevant to the students. If anyone has any comments or for the student body or the issues, they may approach the lectern.
Good. Oh. Well, I thought I was going to have an open forum with Wendy and Dr. Ramirez, but I really wanted to get Dr. Ramirez's input on, so if there was parvo in like in dogs, or if there was PERVs in swine, would it be smart with just like common sense and biosecurity precautions to take those animals and put them in different kennels or different populations? So I just wanted his input on that. And then with Wendy, I just wanted to ask like what her comment would be to students and other people who argue that she should have taken a larger pay cut. So I guess that's what I got. But
all right, if you want, here I can give you my card, and if you email me, I can put you in contact.
Oh, I'll just email them directly.
Okay,
don't worry.
Great. That works as well. Yeah, those mass emails that get sent out to the student body, if you reply to them, that does go to Wendy, by the way. Some people seem not to know that. With that, are there any more comments for open forum? Great.
Yeah, I also thought President Winterstein might stick around, but that's all right. She can catch it on the YouTube later. Glancing through your U-bill, you may have noticed a disclaimer informing you that no refunds will be made on about $500 worth of mandatory fees regardless of educational delivery. Yeah, and this was confirmed because I called the Department of Receivables. So ISU administration will have students believe, and they said it quite forcefully tonight, that they're committed to a full in-person semester. But we've seen it across this country, from North Carolina, Michigan State, Notre Dame. These are all convincing case studies to me that online is pretty much right around the corner, and along with some of the support from this governing body. Now, I don't know if I necessarily agree with the decision to go completely online, because I believe the College of Veterinary Medicine has established a relatively safe learning environment. But I also believe that we should do our best to keep our peers and colleagues within the Ames community, as this has now been recommended by numerous infectious disease experts. However, the original decision to bring tens of thousands of students back to Ames was an irresponsible decision, as we saw altogether a huge surge in cases that needlessly threatened lives of our students and community, and continues to do so. The Iowa State administration is correct that many of these cases are occurring off campus in apartments and backyard parties. But this decision, in consultation with the Board of Regents, should have included, or at least considered, the major externality of off-campus behavior. And I asked Senator Young to ask this question because I want to know what behavior psychologists and administrators spoke with when they believed students would embrace mask mandates and physical distancing off campus while playing beer pong. I want to know what psychology professors gave ministers and even some senators here about their profound optimism about the risk decision-making behavior of young adults. The decision of this university's administration to punish students engaging in risky behavior will continue to drive this behavior further underground and will violate our students' trust with the testing program administered by the university. I know this for a fact, as I know many who went to Marshalltown for testing for fear of repercussions from Iowa State. I recognize my peers and colleagues want to return to campus. In fact, they did a survey at the College of Veterinary Medicine. But when you're in a leadership position, you do not always give those you lead what they want in all cases. You serve to make the difficult decisions. The decision to return to campus was morally and ethically wrong, and I believe it was made with a deference to our finances and not to our higher aspirations. But now we must deal with this decision and its consequences, and should not be sending our students home to their home communities, and perhaps strategic to return to online education from our apartments and dormitories. With this in mind, I would like to address another issue. Last semester, ISU refused to refund mandatory fees, an upsetting decision considering other regents prorated their fees, while the Board of Regents also seeks to establish uniformity of mandatory fees between the schools. We were told that our services were different, and I was told that ISU was handling mandatory fees differently. However, after assessing the situation, all I could see was that our online fitness classes were being administered through Instagram, while the University of Iowa's was administered through Zoom. Fair enough technicality. However, even after a summer's worth of planning, our administrators are still unable or unwilling to find an equitable solution for students. If we return online, students will not be, or potentially not be, using state or lead, nor the Memorial Union. Mandatory fees, we are told, are assessed whether we use them or not. However, at least prior to this pandemic, we had the choice to use them. There's another issue I'd like to draw this body's attention to, and this stems from the Board of Regents. The board allows universities to make exemptions to their fees based on access to campus services and physical proximity to campus. I have friends who are not here on campus, who are not even here in Iowa, who are not exempt from their fees because they are remaining home due to their immunocompromised status. With our mandatory fees collected, university administration can continue to funnel this money into services we will not be using because the university model is, I believe, fundamentally broken. I believe the crux of it is federally guaranteed student loans and the lack of state funding. A history professor from North Carolina State added another dimension to this. Quote, students are Students keep paying because their costs are subsidized with loans. High school seniors turn out to be fairly poor at assessing the long-term costs and benefits of taking on debt in order to briefly enjoy campus amenities. Offer them a fun time now for money paid in the future, and most will take it. This is not a slight against the current generation of college students. We were all 18 once. I guess that even includes me. Without this funding and zero risk in their loans and 18-year-olds at the helm of these decisions, universities continue to spend on extracurricular activities and experiences to attract students and perpetuate this business model, rather than having to worry about the educational one, as their loans are guaranteed. And just take a look at our perfectly green fields east of Jack Trice and Maple Willow Larch, while there are still millions of deferred maintenance costs from our existing buildings. I would wholeheartedly support an increase in our building fee and a reduction in our recreation fee to address this discrepancy. Our gyms should not be the priority. I believe Carver Hall should be. Compare the salaries of my lecturers and professors to the six-figure salaries of administrators and the directors of these services. Universities claim to address wealth inequality while simultaneously promoting it within the ranks. No better highlighted by the multi-million-dollar contracts for head coaches for a relatively captive workforce. This pandemic has threatened this model, and I believe it is time for a change. I believe it's time to tie tuition to inflation, instructional costs, and teacher pay, and move away from treating college like a four-year resort. Also, just a side note, I was walking by Carver Hall the other day, and I noticed Dennis Muhlenberg, former CEO of Boeing, is a distinguished alumni here at Iowa State. Maybe something to think about. Thank you.
All right, good evening, everyone. Mine is a face that you should not be unfamiliar with. I have been here quite a bit. I'm going to keep this short. I'm just going to make an assertion that I don't think any of you should disagree with. The university, their main object that they've been attempting to maximize here is their profit. The health and safety of all of you, of the student body, of your constituents, has been incidental to them. Now, here's why I believe that. First of all, the absolutely, frankly, shocking display that we saw today, right here, just a few minutes ago. Constantly, President Winterstein and Dr. Ramirez attempted to downplay the seriousness of what we are dealing with. I just want to, bring attention to when asked about the University of Illinois' testing model, which I think is quite excellent. Why did Dr. Ramirez highlight the cost of the testing that was being employed at Illinois? $1 million a week? I think to be assured that what they're doing is safe and right, I think $1 million a week is a small price to pay. You can disagree with me on that, but I certainly think that was concerning that he highlighted that point specifically. We were told time and again by them that this is not something serious to deal with. We're actually doing more than what we need to be doing. The point about the EU using 1 meter instead of 2 meters, all things that I thought were quite incidental and didn't really address what we wanted to hear from them, which was, what concrete steps are you taking to look ahead and to deal with the situation that we're in right now? So, what does that mean for all of you? I sat here for 2 years and I tried to make my voice heard. It's hard. It's really hard because a lot of people don't take us seriously, unfortunately. But I know your money is already in their hands, and it's probably in their hands for next semester too. You might think that that's the end of it. You might think that there's no point in continuing to fight. But what can we do, right? Should we just give up then? No. I think all we can do now is make our voices heard. And that starts right here in this room with all of you. So when you debate this bill next week, make your voice heard. make sure that President Winterstein, Dr. Ramirez, and the leaders of this campus, make sure that they hear exactly how dissatisfied you are with them and with how they've been handling this. I know I'm going to do my best, and I hope to see all of you do it too. Thank you.
If you're speaking during open forum, can you state your name at the beginning of your talk for the purposes of the minutes? Thank you.
Sure thing. I'm Luke. Howdy. I've been wondering if the bill to put classes online and evict as many students as possible from campus has been at all informed by the diversity of backgrounds that our students have, and the fact that Ames is one of the most infected per capita areas in the world. And if we kick out as many people as possible, we're likely sending them to major cities, homes with grandma in them, and all around places that would make the COVID-19 situation around the world worse. So I'd like to hear anybody's input on that that's willing to speak on behalf of the bill.
As a point of information, the two bill sponsors are in quarantine due to coronavirus.
Epic. Thank you for your time.
Are there any further comments for open forum? Okay, then seeing none, we will move into adopting the agenda. Are there any motions, additions, subtractions, changes to the agenda to be made? Senator Advait.
Move to add 2020-2-42 SG under 2020-2-0 under seating a GPS as senator. I can't read the bill number.
What was the number on that one again, Senator?
2020-2-0, 2020-2-42 SG.
Okay, so there has been a motion to add 042 SG.
Second.
And there's been a second. Is there any objection? Okay, then seeing none, the item has been added. Senator Advait, still your speaking privilege. Senator Bender.
Move to add 16F to new business.
There's been a motion to add 16F to the end of new business. Did you mean to say 13, Senator Bender?
13.
Okay, there's been a motion to add 13F to the bottom of new business. Is there a second? Any objection? Okay, then without objection, the item is added to the agenda. Speaker Ludwig.
I move to add 41 SD, seating UROC senators to the top of special orders.
There's been a motion to add the bill to seat the UROC senators to the top of special orders. Is there a second? Any objection? Okay, then seeing none, the bill has been added.
I yield.
Any motions?
Move to approve the agenda.
There's been a motion to approve the agenda, and there's been a second. Is there any objection? Okay, seeing no objection, the agenda has been approved. Moving on to the approval of last week's minutes. Are there any corrections or changes to last week's minutes? There's been a motion to adopt last week's minutes. There's been a second. Is there any objection? Okay, then seeing none, the minutes have been adopted. Moving on to committee reports. First, rules of Speaker Ludwig.
All right, Rules had its first meeting last week. Just kind of got things rolling. We dealt with the two bylaw bills that are up tonight. I believe the Chapter 4 amendment for a hybrid meeting, that one was sent unfavorably by the Rules Committee, and the Chapter 4 rewrite was sent favorably by the committee. I yield.
Any questions for Speaker Ludwig? Okay. Seeing none, we'll move on to Finance with Finance Director Class.
Yeah, so we had our first Finance Committee last night, committee meeting. Got the new senators situated. We saw a triathlon club. We sent them favorably. There are a lot of changes to the bill because of some miscommunication between the committee and the organization. I can explain that later during the bill. I also discussed it in my email. Enrollment numbers came out, so there is a balance for legislative relations on the bottom of my report from the classroom. Audits have started according to COA. That will be getting done hopefully here in the next couple of weeks. And there's going to be a couple of bills for asset FY20, some more funding bills that we're seeing for first read tonight, and then at-larges should be seated next week. So busy. If you have any questions, please ask. Thanks.
All right. Any questions for the Finance Director? Then seeing none, we will go on to PR with Senior Director of Communications, Olson.
So just today, I had a meeting with Diversity and Inclusion's Vice President in order to talk about different social media campaigns we had during the summer and also are planning on doing. You can check out our Instagram accounts to kind of see what that has been recently. We have posted important information regarding COVID-19. So if anyone in this room is somewhat confused about numbers and different reporting, make sure you check out those posts. And it's also linked under health and wellness with 2 separate links that you can look at on Iowa State websites. We planned our first meeting and formed our committee, so super excited about that. And we're working on other things regarding the virtual Club Fest coming up and other activities on campus.
Any questions? Okay, and seeing none, we will go on to Diversity and Inclusion Committee with President Fritz.
Hello. So the update from Diversity and Inclusion is that Lauren will be finalizing her decisions for the committee by the end of next week, and there still is room for one more senator. So if someone is interested in being on that committee, reach out to Director of Diversity and Inclusion, Lauren Perk, for that. And that's all.
All right, any questions? And seeing none, we'll move on to University Affairs Committee, Student Initiatives Committee with Senator Hovey.
Okay, hi everyone. So first and foremost, the SI meeting regarding the COVID-19 resolution will take place tomorrow at 5 p.m. on WebEx. I'm still working on inviting everyone and making it like a public meeting, but that should be done by tonight. Yeah, if you have any thoughts or opinions, which I'm sure you all do, I strongly recommend you attend this meeting and just speak on those. I also encourage you to invite any other students that you know are passionate about this issue to come and voice their opinions. As for initiatives on campus, we want to move forward with the expansion of outdoor seating areas. We're also going to look at implementing a sort of printing credit transfer system. Some majors get a lot more printing credits than others, so I feel like that would be something worth looking into. And I think that is it for me. Does anyone have any questions?
Okay, then seeing none, we will go on to Civic Engagement Committee with Senator Samuel.
Yeah, not a lot going on tonight. We're just going to be seating people to the at-large members and senators to the committee tonight, so I yield.
Thank you. Are any questions? Okay, then seeing none, we'll go on to comments from the executive branch with President Fritz.
Yes, hello everyone. Happy Wednesday. Happy game week. I'm so excited to watch the football game. But my name is Morgan Fritz. I usually don't introduce myself, but there are a few new faces in the room, so I'm very excited that you guys are able to come. Please come every single Wednesday.
So just today, Schrader and I had a meeting with Provost Wicker and Associate Provost Vander Zanden. We just talked about concerns with classes and how to improve those during the remainder of the semester. We also had a meeting with President Winterstein and the Graduate and Professional Student Senate leaders this week. We talked about a lot of what was discussed here tonight in President Winterstein's presentation. Additionally, there was President's Council this morning, which is just a monthly meeting in which President Winterstein gives updates to campus leaders. We have also hired an administrative assistant, and they will be joining us within the next couple of weeks. The academic continuity work group is still meeting, just making improvements to classes as the semester goes on. The final advisor open forum is happening this Friday from 12:30 to 1:30. 2 of those have already happened, but please be present for the last one if you're able to, just to have some input on our new advisor. And finally, the cabinet meetings have been going well as also cabinet members are busy scheduling or selecting individuals for their committees. Does anybody have any questions for me?
Any questions? Okay, then we will move on to our bills. Before we do that, I will send a notice that Robert's Rules has been updated. There is now a 12th edition that went into effect last week. I don't have it. I reviewed the changes. They don't seem to impact anything that we do, but if you know the 12th edition, maybe like Senator Mast or Senator Ludwig, then I guess you have an advantage for a little bit till I read it. But there aren't many major changes. A lot of it was just clarifying existing points, but that is the rules we are operating under currently. So there is now a 12th edition of Robert's Rules of Order available on Amazon. We will, thank you. Give it up for Robert. We'll move on to general orders. Within general orders, we have 2020-2-005F, Funding Triathlon Club, and that is with Senator Bender.
Yeah, can I move to propose Finance Committee minutes, or amendments, sorry.
Okay, the Finance Committee amendments have been proposed. If Senator, or Vice Speaker Gonzalez could pull them up on the screen.
If you guys want to come talk at all.
And if, while that's taking place, if the members of the club maybe could introduce the club, the funding request, and what's going on there.
All right, so hello. Hi everyone. My name's Daryl, I'm the treasurer for the club, and this is Shaden, he's the president for the club. The bill is pretty much just to move funding from a club or a race already funded in April, but due to COVID, it was moved to October of this year and changed to the fiscal year. We weren't able to get it submitted. We're not really asking for any more money. It was already funded for last year. Yeah, that's pretty much just an overview of it.
Senator Bender, the floor is yours.
Yield my time to Finance Director.
And we are still on the Finance Committee amendment, so only comments related to those would be germane.
Call the question on the minutes.
Okay, there's been a call to question on the amendments from Finance Committee. There's been a second. Are there any objections? Okay, then we will go into a placard vote. If there's a call for unanimous consent, is there any objections? Okay, then seeing no objections, the amendments have been approved by unanimous consent. We will now back onto the bill as a whole.
Yield my time to Finance Director.
Yeah, so as you can see, there were a lot of amendments. The confusion was, as they said, they were already funded for this last year. They submitted a carryover request. Unfortunately, it was past the deadline of the fiscal year. So I told them to come through this process. They did everything that I told them to do, which was great. Why it was confusing is because they had a national event already in their budget for this year, so we just thought it was a change of venue. Instead, it was an additional one that was postponed from last year. So they had all this funding that they didn't use last year, so technically through their audits, it will go back to special projects. But they got it last year. I see no reason to not give it to them again. This is a national competition, and this is what this club does. So I would strongly urge you to vote yes, if I can so do that. And yeah, I yield.
Called question.
It's been a call to question on the bill as a whole. Is there a second? Any objection? Okay, then we will go into a roll call vote on the bill. Yes would be to give the club money. No would be to not give the club money. Okay, so Adagarla. Yes. Advait. Bender. Buma. Brown. Emery. Fahim. Grant. Gonzalez. Hayes. Hovey. Klaptotowskis. Lau. Lewis. Lona. Ludwig. Mass. Pfeiffer. Simanu. Schulte. Simonson. Springer. Stenzel. Samuel. And Young. Okay, then this funding request is passed.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
So we will now move on to internal matters. Within internal matters, we have 2020-2-041 SD, seating UROC senators with Senator Ludwig. The UROC one?
Okay, so I've just spoken with Mr. Stanley in the back, the UROC president. There are some requirements in their constitution that they did not meet when it came to nominating the senators. So we actually can't consider this bill right now. So I'm going to move to table for 1 week.
There's been a motion to table the bill for 1 week, and there's been a second. Any objections? We'll move on to a placard vote on whether to table the bill. It's been called for unanimous consent. Is there unanimous consent to table the bill for 1 week? Okay, then the bill has been tabled. We now move on to 2020-2-039 SD, seating a GPSS senator with Vice Speaker Gonzalez.
Yes. Will the GPSS senator please come up, or the nominee? And then go ahead and say your name, education, a little bit about yourself if you want.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Bailey Goff, and I represent the College of Veterinary Medicine, but I'm here today to be seated as a GPSS senator at large. Originally, I was slated on the Senate, Graduate and Professional Student Senate, to represent the College of Veterinary Medicine, but now I look forward to represent the entirety of the Graduate and Professional Student Senate at the student government here.
Still your speaking privilege, Vice Speaker Gonzalez.
Yes. Does anyone, wait, you know what, I'll just yield.
Okay, Senator Advait.
Hello. Thank you for trying to be a senator. This is a great way to affect change on campus.
Absolutely.
I was going to ask you why you want to be a senator,
Sure.
and if you have any projects or any goals you want to achieve this year as part of as being a senator.
Absolutely. Can you repeat the first question for me, please? Thank you.
Why you're joining student government, I
Sure,
guess. and Senate.
absolutely. So my overall goal when I first became a GPSS senator was to become more involved with the College of Veterinary Medicine and to be able to make my voice heard from the College of Veterinary Medicine. However, upon my first meeting, I realized that my intentions were much larger than just representing the College of Veterinary Medicine. I've had my time doing that, and I know there are more of a voice to be heard as a professional student for those graduate students as well. So my intentions are much broader to be able to represent to the student government as a whole. Certain projects or maybe institutions I am very passionate about would be diversity and inclusion, especially for graduate and professional students. I'm currently working on an online certificate with Purdue University for diversity and inclusion in veterinary medicine. We are the lowest profession with the lowest number of diversity and inclusion, and I want to make that well aware. And diversity and inclusion within graduate professional students is very of high importance to me. So that's something that I'm passionate about.
Thank you for that. You sound eminently qualified for this position, and funny that you brought diversity and inclusion. There is an open seat for senators on it, so
I
think.
saw that. I heard that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
But if there are no other questions, I'm gonna call the question on this bill.
Okay, there's been a call to question in a second. So we'll move. Is there any objection to voting now? Okay, without objection, then we will move into a placard vote. There's been a call for unanimous consent. Is there any objection? Okay, and seeing no objection, the senator has been sat. Thank you. And is he on his way? And our Chief Justice, our Supreme Court meets at this time, so our Chief Justice should be on his way to swear you in anytime. So thank you. Thank you for being patient. So we have, next we have 2020-2-042 SG, seating at-large members to the Student Initiatives Committee, and that is with Senator Advait.
Hello, everybody. This is just to seat members on the student initiatives. So if nominees Anderson, Cans, and Peterson could please make their way to the lectern right now. And while they're getting there, unfortunately, nominee Skinner could not be here today due to an unforeseen circumstance. However, I will be speaking for her. Alana is a biochemistry major on a secondary education path, and they want to join the committee because they value a good campus environment. They've noticed things like lack of campus lighting and no policies for dorm living issues. So they think being part of a committee that advocates for that would be beneficial. You guys can go now.
All right. Okay. So I'm Dylan Peterson, and I am a freshman this year, and my major is biochemistry as well. And I'd like to say that it is very nice to be in an event with people and not over computer. That is very, very nice. I guess why I wanted to join the Student Initiatives Committee is because, well, one, I really wanted to get involved, amongst the university. And also to I like to think of myself as a person who influences change, and if I could, leave my mark in any way I could, I guess this is a nice way to do it. So that's me. I'll leave it there.
Okay, I'm Jamie Anderson. I'm a sophomore in computer engineering, and I wanted to get involved in Student Initiatives Committee because I felt like the first semester and a half at Iowa State that I had was fantastic. And I kind of wanted to give back to the community that helped make that possible in any way that I could, which seemed like the best way to go forward with it.
And I know we're missing one person, but all of these people have made it through Chair Hovey's rigorous selection process, so I can tell you they're going to be fantastic on the committee. And if there are no other placards up, I'm going to call the question on this bill.
Okay, there's been a call to question and a second. Any objection? Okay, then we'll move into a placard vote. It's called for unanimous consent. Is there any objection to approving the nominees by unanimous consent? Then seeing none, the at-larges have been sat to Student Initiatives Committee. We will now move on to 2020-2-032 SC, confirming a nominee for election commissioner with, this is Speaker Ludwig.
Yeah, if Emily could approach the podium and talk about why she wants to be election commissioner again and what her plans are for the year.
Hi, sorry, that was a long journey. My name is Emily Risvik. I'm going into my 4th year. I study both political science and community and regional planning. I've served on election commission for 3 election cycles and have served as the election commissioner for 2 of those cycles. If there are any questions, I'll take those.
Speaker Ludwig, it is still your floor. Vice Speaker Gonzalez.
Hi, I would just like to let the Student Government Senate know that Ms. Rusvik is very knowledgeable in her role. She does a lot of behind the scenes work when it comes to election season, and not a lot of people know what happens. She does take a good chunk of her time during the spring semester setting this up, and it would be very difficult to find somebody new or to groom or to train somebody to do this job. So I just want to advise that. She does a great job in her role as well. She's very happy to answer any questions. But yeah, I'll yield at that.
Any further discussions, questions, or motions? There's been a call to question and a second. Is there any objection? Okay, then seeing no objection, I will go into a roll call vote as this requires 2/3. There's been a call for unanimous consent. Is there any objection to approving the nominee by unanimous consent? Okay, then seeing none, the nominee has been confirmed.
Thanks.
Okay, we will now move on to 2020-2-036SG, seating at-large members to the Civic Engagement Committee, and this is with Senator Samuel.
Yeah, this is just to seat the at-large members, so will the nominees come to the podium? And one of them couldn't make it tonight, but he has worked in civic engagement before, and he's excited to join.
Hello, my name's Abigail Byland. I'm a freshman this year at Iowa State. I'm majoring in linguistics and I am pre-law. I wanted to get involved and join the Civic Engagement Committee because I think especially this year, the election that we're coming up on in November is extremely important for the future of our country and our communities, etc. And I think that history has shown that our age group, kids in college, the youth vote doesn't typically show up. And I think that this year it is pivotal for the election that the college age student shows up to the election and has a passion for the country that we all live in.
If the other nominee, yep.
Hello, everyone. My name is Sean McDermott, and I am a sophomore studying economics and community and regional planning. I am a transfer this year from Wartburg College last fall and spring. And at Wartburg, I was on Student Senate and served on the Political Action Committee, kind of Wartburg's equivalent of the Civic Engagement Committee. And through that, and with this being an election year, I really feel that the college, especially freshmen and new college students being new voters, giving them voter registration information as well as information about nonpartisan information about how the political process works is pivotal in this early process in our voting experience. So that is the reason why I'd like to join the Civic Engagement Committee.
Senator Samuel, the floor is still yours.
Yeah, I'll yield for any questions.
Okay, are there any questions, motions, discussion points? Is there a call to question? Is there a second? Any objection? Okay, seeing none, we will now move on to a placard vote on the nominees. So call for unanimous consent. Is there any objection? Okay, and seeing none, the at-large members have been confirmed to Civic Engagement Committee. We'll now move on to 2020-2-037SG, seating Senate members to the Civic Engagement Committee with Senator Samuel.
Yeah, will the senators go up and introduce themselves? And Senator Weathers is still in quarantine, so.
Okay, so hi, my name's Abigail Schulte. I'm an engineering senator. I was on Civic Engagement Committee last year as a member at large, and then I ran for Senate this year and now senator. One of the things I'm really looking forward to doing is, as we mentioned, November is going to be a great time and a great month. I really want to work on improving the STEM vote and making sure that our engineering college is really actively involved in our community. That's what I'm going to work on this.
Hi, so my name is Seba Fahim. I'm also an engineering senator. I was in civic engagement committee last year. Like others have said before, I'm also really excited for this election. It's going to be, I've never been able to vote in a presidential election, so this personally is very exciting. And then also many of our peers, our fellow students, have also never voted in a presidential election, so it's just an exciting time overall. So one of the things that I'm really interested in is making sure that students have that information, and so making sure that it's present, it's accessible, and so that's a project that I worked on last year for a while, the Department of Residence project, making sure that voter registration forms, information, absentee ballot request forms were all part of the Department of Residence and throughout campus. And so yeah, I hope to continue those efforts into this semester and up until election and forward as well, because there'll always be another election. Thank you.
There's been a call to question and a second. Is there any objection? Okay, seeing none, we will go into a placard vote and a call for unanimous consent. Is there any objection to confirming the nominees by unanimous consent? And seeing none, the nominees have been confirmed. Thank you. Now move on to 2020-2-038 SG, seating at-large members to the Sustainability Committee with Speaker Ludwig.
Yeah, if the nominees for Sustainability Committee at-large positions could approach the podium. I know we were going to have some absences tonight. It might have been the whole bunch of at-larges. Okay. Yeah. Yeah, since none of them are here, I'm just going to move to table for 1 week.
There's been a motion to table the bill for 1 week and a second. Is there any objection? Okay, so then without objection, the motion has been tabled for 1 week. Well, we will now move on to 2020-2-040 SG, seating senators to the Sustainability Committee.
Yeah, I'm hoping the Senate nominees are here, or at least some of them. I know there is an absence. So yeah, if the Senate nominees want to approach the podium, I have a statement from Director Seth, the Sustainability Director, that was broadly for both the Senate and at-large positions that she would wanted me to read. So I will read that quick. She said, "It is my belief that the individuals I've selected for Sustainability Committee are eminently qualified for this committee. All demonstrate leadership in sustainability within their own individual lives, as well within the communities of which they are a part. These individuals come from a variety of backgrounds and majors, so each has a unique perspective and experiences to bring to this committee. I am confident that they are all passionate, innovative, and hardworking people who, together, will foster a more sustainable campus and campus climate." So if the nominees would like to introduce themselves and talk about why they are interested in the committee, that'd be great.
Awesome. Hi, Senate. I'm Logan Simonson, UROC Senator and electrical engineering student. I come with an energy focus when it comes to sustainability. I think there are practical things that we can do on campus to reduce our impact. And I hope to work together with the diverse background that we're going to make once we get our full committee confirmed to actually do practical things on campus. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. My name is Julie Anderson. I'm a Cal Senator. I'm a junior in Agriculture and Society and Poli-Sci. One thing I want to focus on for this year on Sustainability Committee is really sending out the message of like the Green Fund within CALS. I don't think a lot of people know about it, and I think they could really use that for some really cool projects.
Okay, there's been a call to question and a second. Is there any objection to voting now? Great, then we will go to a placard vote. There's been a call for unanimous consent. Is there any objection to confirming the senators by unanimous consent? Then seeing none, the senators have been confirmed. Thank you. Then we will move on to 2020-2-003Y, Student Government Amendment to Chapter 4.3 of the Bylaws with Senator Klaptatauskas.
Yeah, this bill was initially proposed to kind of help with quarantine. It's pretty evident that our senators are going to keep being quarantined and interacting with COVID. So I think it's pretty important that we pass this bill so we can have full quorum when we have important legislation on the dockets. I yield.
Speaker Ludwig.
Okay, so first I'd like to move to propose a Rules Committee amendment. There's just one. It changes the amend line to add and changes 4.3 to 7.2.1.3, or sorry, 17.
Okay, so the Rules Committee amendments have been proposed that changes the location of the bylaw amendment. And committee amendments don't need a second, so we will just go straight into debate.
Yeah, so the committee made this amendment because we felt that if this bill passes, that it should be in Chapter 17, which is a chapter intended to be temporary and just created for this time during the pandemic. And so we thought it would better fit in that section.
Do you yield?
I yield.
Is there any discussion on the amendment? It's been a call to question. Is there a second? And there was a second. And is there any objection? Great, then we'll go into a placard vote on the amendment. There's been a call for unanimous consent. Is there any objection to approving the amendment by unanimous consent? Okay, then seeing no objection, it has been approved. We will go back into the bill as a whole. Speaker Ludwig.
Yeah, so like I said, Rules Committee sent this unfavorably. We did that for a number of reasons. Primary among them is that the way that Senate meetings function, specifically under Robert's rules, makes it hard for debate to be functional and for members to have an equal voice and presence in that discussion, which is very important, especially with a lot of the decisions that we make. And so the committee felt that this solution specifically would not help, or would not create an even playing field for all members involved. We also, I had the chance with Vice President Schrader to speak with the president of UNI, and they've had some issues. They've gone hybrid, or they went hybrid for a while and now are online. But when they were in the hybrid model, they had issues keeping members engaged who were connecting digitally, and there are concerns about that as well. So those are the reasons that we sent it unfavorably. The committee doesn't believe that this is the best fix for this situation, and we'd be happy to look into further ones. I know that Senator Weathers proposed a proxy voting method that he believes might be a better process, and the committee is open to further discussion, but that is the current position, that we believe this bill should not be passed. And if other members of the committee would like to discuss that, go further into that, onto why they believe that, I would encourage them to do so. I yield.
Senator Springer.
Yeah, so I'm also on Rules Committee, and I agree with Speaker Ludwig. I think it's really unfortunate that some senators can't be here either just for a little while because they're quarantining, or because they're not on campus at all because of this situation. I feel for them, but I also agree that that having a hybrid situation that includes the senators that are unable to attend would be a disadvantage for every senator here, and overall the effect would be negative. There's a proxy bill coming out that I think is an interesting solution to this that we can consider when it comes up. But yeah, I will be voting no on this bill, and I encourage everyone to consider it. I yield.
Senator Simonson.
I just want to say that we're worried about an uneven playing field, by not, when we, in a hybrid model. But right now, we're already pretty much there. Because if a senator's not at this meeting, they have no vote right now. I'd prefer that we could at least, even if it's not perfect, we, as soon as possible, allow those senators who aren't at the meetings any voice in these meetings, because right now they have none other than group me's and texts to senators who can maybe ask a question. But right now they have no vote. And maybe there's another proposal, but it's not here right now, and we're a month into the semester. So this might not be perfect, but if there isn't another solution immediately in the pipeline, I encourage us to vote yes on this tonight. Thank you. I yield.
Senator Young.
Thank you. Both Bailey and I have sat in on GPSS Senate meetings, and they run theirs completely hybrid via WebEx, which we have all access to. I just wanted to bring that forward so that everyone is aware that that is a successful model that has been in place for a while now. And following off of what was previously said, I agree that something needs to be done immediately. We can't have senators who don't have a voice who are proposing bills and can't speak on them. I think that that doesn't set us up for success, and it doesn't set us up to move quickly and forward with the students who depend on us to make decisions on their behalf.
Senator Advait. Vice Speaker Gonzalez.
Hi, I think I'm going to direct this question to Senator Klopotowskis. Could you confirm the location of Senator Stevens?
Senator Stevens is in Philadelphia due to family matters.
Okay, so, and that's personal about what's going on and why he would be there, but I believe, and this is just in general, I believe that students voted us in here because they knew that we would be interacting with, the ISU community, we would be interacting with our constituents. And although I feel for the senators who are in quarantine, who cannot attend these in-person meetings, I think a generalized bylaw change like this would be dangerous at this point, just because there's just such a broad interpretation for like what counts as an excuse to not be here. And so I think as senators, we were voted in by our constituents to interact with them and be with them and know what's going on here in Ames. And unfortunately, I just don't see that happening if people are elsewhere across the country and not doing their job here. So I guess on that issue, I might have some just some worries, but I would like to hear further discussion because I was not aware that GPSS was having very successful meetings. So thank you for bringing that up because I had no clue, and I would be interested to hear more about how that works. So thank you for that.
Senator Klopotowskis.
I agree with the sentiment that Senator Springer and Speaker Ludwig had, but I agree to the point that Senator Simonson said that we need to enact a change in this bill tonight because we have very important legislation coming up next week. I think there will be members of the community that are going to be upset if their senators are not present to be able to vote on the bill. So I like the idea of a proxy vote, but I don't think having that bill enacted next week should happen. I think we should enact something into this bill of some sorts. And then in regards to Vice Speaker Gonzalez's comments, personally, I actually haven't had any people come up to me in person, but my inbox has been flooded with emails about various bills. So I would counter that for the safety of our senators, there's various ways that constituents can reach out to them, and I think it honestly is more of a health risk for them to be interacting. I don't see a benefit to them being in campus rather than responding to emails or other forms of direct methods. So my advice would be that we motion to amend this bill to something that the Senate agrees on so all senators have a voice effective at the next meeting. And with that, I yield.
Okay, then Senator Emery.
Yeah, so Senator Stevens is a College of Design senator, and currently I believe there's only one spot for that, correct me if I'm wrong. So he is obviously not here, so he only, like, people in College of Design really don't have a voice necessarily right now through their college, just because he's the only one and he's not here. So with the comments about like it being an uneven playing field going online, I agree with Senator Simonson when he was saying like it's more of a even playing field if we adapt something that is like this than what we have right now. So I yield.
Senator Advait.
Right, so I'm part of Rules Committee too, and I do agree we need a solution to, like, this is an issue, I get it, but these are also unprecedented times. I know Senator Simonson brought up the point that having no vote means you have no voice, and he said something about we need something, unless there's something in the pipeline. Well, we do have something in the pipeline. It's I believe Senator Weathers has something up on proxy voting, which we think is going to be a better solution than this, if anything. There's just so much you can't do when we're hybrid, or if you're talking through a computer. You cannot read the tone of the room. You cannot change the tone of the room. You cannot speak up in the middle to change the course of debate. I believe you've seen me call the question on a lot of bills, call for UC, doing all of that online through a computer. Presents just so many more obstacles. Maybe having a proxy might be something we want to consider. I don't know. Secondly, what Vice Speaker Gonzalez said, the language on the bill is much less than watertight, and we need to uphold tighter standards so we're holding up the standard of presence and the standard of people being able to truly represent their constituents here and having that sort of rigor in this room. And lastly, we're not losing a whole lot by waiting a week, maybe, if that's how you want to think about it. We have most of our people here, and yes, I know 2 people being out is really bad, and sometimes that can change votes, but such is the circumstances we are in. I yield.
Senator Stenzel.
Point of information, I'm looking at the proxy bill right now. If that were to be passed during discussion next week, would that be enacted for the remaining business of that meeting next week?
What does the last line of the bill explain when it goes into effect?
It does not, that I see.
Then I don't know.
Okay, just curious.
Perhaps
something
maybe
we can discuss later. I was just curious because I know that maybe has an impact on people's vote on this bill, so I thought it was relevant.
Then I will go to Senator Hayes.
Hi, I'm reading a message that I've received from Senator Zastrow. Hey y'all, this is Senator Zastrow. I wish I was there right now, but this bill isn't perfect, but I'd much rather be able to participate. The bill is in section 17, so it sunsets at the end of the semester anyway. I'd rather have a bad experience Skyping in than not being able to talk at all. If there's something better coming, then we could repeal this bylaw when the better system is in place. And just to clarify, at the end of the semester, because it is in chapter 17, it automatically gets repealed at the end of the semester. And it could get extended a semester too.
Right. Senator Pfeiffer.
I was going to say about the same thing. I think having it now is important, and we should have a temporary measure in place, even if it's only for a week or 2. Having that now is better than waiting longer and not letting Zastrow or Stevens participate in any capacity at all. I think some capacity for a week is better than none. So I yield my time.
Speaker Ludwig.
Yeah, so I've enjoyed the discussion going on around the room, and I think I understand the sentiment to get something in place now, and that's why members of Rules Committee have proposed alternative solutions. But I don't believe that rushing a solution is the best option when we could have something in place that's more long-term, that functions better. I would personally rather go online fully than function under a hybrid setting, which is the discussions that we had with the UNI president. Those meetings were more fruitful because they were able to set broader rules, and Senator Mass actually has a bill in the pipeline right now that's on in new business that will establish firm rules for online meetings. And if there's interest in going online, that is something you can bring to me. At least as the bylaws read right now, I generally have the broad authority to move these meetings online. And if there's an interest in bringing it to that format, then that's something I would entertain if a number of you brought it to me. I have a lot of concerns about what this bill looks like. I don't want to rush these changes, and I think it's important that we not just do something quick and dirty because we want to do something fast. I think it's important to do it right. So I yield.
Senator Springer.
Senator Young had her placard up before me, so
My goal isn't to do an order. I try and do all the people the first time through, and then I try and balance debate. If you would like to be moved down, you can ask for that to happen.
I'd like to be moved down.
Okay, Senator Young.
Thank you. Sorry if my placard isn't big enough because I had to use a piece of paper. I just have another point to bring forward. So the College of Veterinary Medicine not only is physically distant from the main campus, but we also have split into professional learning communities within all of our classes. That breaks our class of 150 people per class into 6, which is then further divided into subsets of 4 for small group work. Every time I come to these meetings, in some extent, I endanger the lives of the people that I work with, including the older professors that I interact face-to-face with all the time for my hands-on surgery labs and my in-person micro labs as well. And I just wanted to bring that point forward, as well as my point about the GPSS being fully online. I understand that we don't want to be quick and brash and have something in place that maybe could be technically having a loophole that people would abuse. However, I think as we had President Winterstein come in here and kind of brush over some of the difficulties that students are facing, as someone who is representing an entire population of students, do we want to be skirting over that and not offering them a voice in this time? I'm really concerned by the fact that we have senators that are not here and that don't have a voice, and I think that we are only going to be more accessible and more flexible if we bring people to the table via the internet. It's a wonderful tool, and I think that we should use it.
Senator Anderson.
So I feel like obviously there needs to be representation from all the senators. So can I ask anyone on Rules Committee, would you guys be able to have a bill by next week that would be enacted before we have to vote on anything else that would allow for people to vote online in a way that you guys would be happy with? I yield.
So Senator Weathers, who's currently in quarantine, and I have a bill that's I'm co-sponsoring with him. The bill allows proxy voters to come in, and we can move the bill to the top of the agenda. And when it goes into committee this week, we can add a committee amendment at the very bottom of the bill that says such changes take effect immediately. So then what you said would happen, the bill would be in effect the moment it is passed, and since it's at the top of the agenda, everything under it, the proxy scheme would apply. I hope that answers your question.
Sure, I yield.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Senator Klopotowskis, you are out of speaking privileges, by the way. Senator Mass.
Yeah, I want to comment briefly on this. I agree. It is a problem when senators can't be here who represent entire groups of people. I understand that. But that being said, I also have helped lead meetings that are hybrid in nature, where you have people online and people in person. And there are significant challenges to doing so. And I worry that if we're going to have some sort of hybrid format for Senate, then we have an entire class of students represented by a senator who is online, who are not able to be as effectively represented because of the nature of them joining online. I think there are other solutions we can have, such as completely virtual meetings or by having proxy votes that have already been proposed by Rules Committee and could substantially benefit those students who need that proper representation. So for those reasons, I'm going to be voting no on this bill this week, and when we see other proposals next week, let's talk about them, because I think they do a much better job of solving this problem that we all recognize and we all understand is a problem. With that, I'll yield.
Senator Grant.
I would like to yield all of my time to Senator Klapatauskas.
I don't want to rush any legislation for this circumstance, but I just think it's very important with a very important and impactful resolution coming up next week that not only we have something in place, and that's also something that senators aren't scrambling at the beginning of the Senate meeting to accommodate for. I think it'd be difficult to rely on a vote and then accommodate within a few minute time span to get their votes in place. So I also don't think that my proposal was by far the best, and I think the Rules Committee proposed a good solution with a proxy accommodation. So I would motion to amend 2020-2-003Y enacted with the entire subject line of ordered from 2020-2-010Y, which is the bill establishing proxy votes.
That's not, that would be a discussion of substantially the similar motion that is already pending. I don't think you can, because then a vote on this bill would be a vote on the different bill, which would be out of order. If you would like to amend it to make this include proxy voting.
That's one motion to amend the enacted line in this current bill to read the identical subject line as the ordered in the proxy bill. The subject line under. I can read it out if you want.
Can you give Vice Speaker Gonzalez the wording or email it or get it in a form where it's easy to move?
Sure.
Sorry, I thought that you were changing the ordered clause to say enact the other bill.
No,
that.
Sorry. The enacted subject line to read the exact subject of the ordered line in 2020-2-10Y.
Okay. So.
Yeah, that.
Can I ask?
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah, okay. Okay, so which one did you say?
Everything below ordered, so that student government bylaw 17.2.
So starting here, right?
Yep.
And then all this.
Yes.
Okay.
And then replace the enacted line that says that student government bylaw 17.2.1.3 with that.
So all this.
Yep.
All right. Thank you.
That's fine. Yes. All right. So there has been a motion to change the actions of this bill to make proxy voting instead of hybrid meetings. Is there a second? There's been a second. Is there any objection to the consideration of this amendment? There's been objection to the consideration of the amendment. We will now move into a vote on whether to consider this amendment. Please place your placards up for yes, you would like to consider this amendment. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17. And up for no. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And up for abstentions. Okay, then with 17 to 10, we will consider this amendment. We will now move into debate on the amendment. Senator Klapatauskas, the floor is yours.
just for the points that I iterated before, we have a very important resolution coming up next week. And Rules Committee, obviously, I implore them to come up with a better solution. But I think it's important that we give our senators due time and due clause to have a representative at the meeting so we can pass the resolution with full voice of the students. I yield.
Senator Mass.
Yeah, I have significant concerns with this. First off, part of the biggest thing that Rules Committee does when we consider a bill is make sure there are not conflicts with other parts of the bylaws. That's pretty much the foremost thing that we do to make sure that a bill doesn't adversely all of a sudden tell us we have two different rules that tell us to do different things. I'm not saying that Dawson did a bad job of writing this bill, but I do know this was an idea that was floated in Rules Committee starting next week with the intention of making significant review and amendments to it as necessary to make sure that it is in fact a workable bill. Because we're not having Rules Committee consider this anymore and we're just tacking it on as a substitutionary amendment, we've got no clue whether or not this causes problems. Honestly, I think it's better if we defeat this motion and then we enact the bill as is, and then come back and consider the proxy voting next week than what we're doing right now. So yeah, I would encourage the body to vote no. We don't know what this is going to do and what problems it may cause for us within a week. And I would hate, with the important subjects that are being discussed next week, as Senator Klapatowska suggested, that we all of a sudden then have confusion on the floor about what is and isn't allowed as we are voting on that resolution. So I would encourage a no vote. I yield.
Senator Springer.
I just keep adding things I want to say. Yeah, I feel like the first thing I need to talk about is Senator Klapatowskis. I'm sorry, I butchered your last name. Yeah, this is like a completely new bill. I don't think that this is how legislation should work. I agree with Senator Mass that this would need huge consideration from Rules Committee before it should have reached the Senate floor. We want to make sure that what we're passing is beneficial to the entire student body, and I think this is just a prime example of what we were just doing a few minutes ago of passing legislation that hasn't been completely thought through with the idea that something is better than nothing and we'll repeal it later. I think that's a very irresponsible and dangerous road to go down, even if it's with our best intentions. I don't think it's a smart move. I understand that the bills that we're going to be talking about next week are very important to all of us and are important to our constituents, but like I said, I don't think it's the right way to write legislation to say that something is better than nothing while we admit that there are flaws to it with the broad future plan to find something better. Like my other Rules Committee senators have said, we have multiple bills in mind and that we're working on that are better than this hybrid idea that I am really excited to debate with you all and that I think will be a lot better solutions. On that note, Senator Weathers wanted to say that his intent when writing the proxy bill was that senators would need to determine their proxies 24 hours ahead, but he is willing to amend it to allow it to take effect immediately for next week's meeting. So I don't like this bill, but I understand the importance of having everyone's voices heard next week. I'm willing to work on a better solution to that. I just think this is definitely not the greatest solution. Another thing I wanted to say is I think it's great that the GPSS meetings are being online and that they're working well, but I also think it's important to note that those are much smaller meetings, and with the size that we have now, it's going to be a lot more difficult. I also disagree with Senator Klapatowskis's comment that we'll be scrambling at the beginning of the next meeting with this proxy bill. I think talking about it now is smart. That way, if it is in a plan to talk about and possibly enact at the beginning of next meeting, the senators that want to have proxies for later bills can start getting an idea of the proxies that they want. And I don't think that we'll be scrambling. I don't think we need that fear. I think that's all I want to say. I will be voting no for this, and I would encourage you all to think strongly about the implications that this kind of legislating has, and also vote no. I yield.
Speaker Ludwig.
All right. So, I mean, I guess I will. I guess I love the legislative ingenuity in this. It's interesting. I have concerns. I seem to be expressing a lot of them tonight. Yeah. So my problem with this amendment isn't that I don't like the idea of proxy voting. I think it might be a good solution for our issue. I do think that Rules Committee needs to look this over. Senator Weathers is great, but it was also his first bill that he's written in the Senate. I gave him some brief guidelines and looked it over real quick, but Rules Committee has not done a thorough review. Additionally, I don't think that this amendment is fair to the body. As much as I would love to believe that everyone here gets the ledge packet on Monday and then excitedly reads all the bills, and that everyone is thoroughly read through on this specific motion, I don't think that's the case. I don't think that members of the Senate have been given the proper amount of time to digest what this specific change looks like, and I hate to be the bad guy in this situation and just be saying no, no, no. But this, to me, is more concerning than the original bill, because this basically throws it right in front of you, and a lot of the members in this room have not had the time to properly digest, consider, and think about this motion. So I would encourage you all to vote no, because I just don't think it's fair to anyone in this room that we vote on this specific motion today. I yield.
Senator Advait.
Hello. Again, this is primarily Senator Dawson's bill, but I co-sponsored it to bring it onto the floor. And number one, this is unfinished language. I can't stress that enough. I'm guessing this has got probably not more than a couple hours of work into it. Like, it really needs to be finished up. And I did look over it, but as early as 2 nights ago, the way the language of the bill was written, one senator could represent everyone in this room and could vote for everyone in this room. And we still haven't been able to look through every single line. I'm not sure what other unintended consequences this language could have. That's just something I came up with reading the bill for 10 minutes. I was expecting to see this in committee tomorrow, being able to go through this line by line and looking at all the consequences each of those lines could have. Secondly, this is just plain strange. Like, this is an entirely different bill we're considering under the name of another bill. We have processes built in, and I know, I as much as I would really like stuff to go through quickly, we have processes built in to represent the interests of everybody involved. Just to give you a really wild example, I know some people in this room are against the COVID-19 bill that's coming up for vote next week. How would people feel if you edited out a completely different bill that was up for second read today to have the contents of that bill, right? And like Senate Speaker Ludwig said, we have the packets and we give people advance warning of what we're going to be considering when. It's simply improper to kind of try to force such a bill through right now. And by the way, I do love the ingenuity here. This is really impressive, but that's off. But yeah, I do have concerns, like I said.
Senator Simonson.
I tend to agree. This is, I think there was an attempt to bring two ideas together right here tonight, so that we're ready for next week. This amendment seems a little rushed. I doubt there's any large issue here, but yeah, we haven't checked, and that's fair. So this debate has gone on a long time, and we're pretty in the weeds. I'm not going to end it right now, but that I think the original bill was pretty good. I think it was a workable solution for the next week or two. That's all I have to say.
Speaker Ludwig.
Okay, I have something of maybe a middle ground solution. I am concerned about rushing this specifically. However, there are ways through which the body can consider this before next week's regularly scheduled meeting. If there is interest in dealing with this, I would be willing to call a special meeting sometime between, well, I need 48 hours notice, so probably Friday through next Tuesday, somewhere in there. We could meet for, I imagine we'll debate for at most 30 minutes to an hour. But I would prefer to defeat this motion, defeat the bill, and then I would be willing to, I'll send out a when to meet for everyone so that we can schedule a special meeting to deal with this specifically so that there are members present able to be represented in some fashion at the meeting next Wednesday on the 16th, when we will be considering the resolution that I know a number of members are concerned about.
I have a question. Would the meeting take place online or in person for me finding a room purposes?
I would use the authority that is loosely granted to me in Chapter 4, I believe, Section 4.
Point of order. I think we're lacking germaneness in this discussion.
Yeah, that's not germane. Sorry. That's my own question. Thanks. Still your floor.
Okay. Yeah, no, it would be online.
Senator Klaptotowskis.
As a proponent of this bill, I would be fine with that, because I think it still meets that getting something accomplished before the beginning of next week's meeting. Because even if we amended Senator Weathers to be immediate, you take Senator Stevens, for example, he's in Philadelphia. I think it's hard for him to communicate to find a proxy from the beginning of the meeting all the way in Philadelphia. So I would encourage a vote on a special meeting so we can get something enacted before the beginning of next week's meeting.
Okay.
Point of information, has the senator in question been seated yet?
No.
As such, would passing this bill tonight let them be seated or even get onto Senate?
That is an open interpretation.
But didn't we have a threshold of 3 meetings for attendance before you were?
No. Not in the current situation.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Senator Hayes.
A question for Rules Committee. If we were to vote yes on this bill today, is there a way that the bill next week, if we were to vote yes on the one that you go over in committee tomorrow, would repeal the bill which we approved today?
We're on the amendment, so we're not supposed to talk about the bill as a whole right now.
I yield my time.
There's been a call to question on the amendment. There's been a second. Is there any objection to voting on the amendment? Okay, then seeing none, we'll move into a placard vote. Please raise your placard up for yes on the amendment. And please raise your placards up for no. Okay, then with a vote of 6 to 21, the amendment has failed. We are back onto the bill as a whole. Senator Grant, it is your speaking privilege. Okay, Senator Springer.
I would be down to have a special meeting. I agree with Senator Kay, not gonna butcher it for a third time, that the bill for next week is important, and if we're not going to be creating a bill just to repeal it, of course, I want all of the representatives for the student body to be able to vote on an important bill. So if we can get that done through a special meeting, which I think we definitely can, and we can have that proxy bill to discuss, I think that that is a great solution. So I would encourage everyone to vote no for this and vote yes for a special meeting. I think that will be much more helpful. I yield.
So I'll go Senator Hayes.
All right, going back to my previous question, I'm still all for the special meeting as well, but say that we vote yes on this bill today, and at the special meeting or at the next Senate meeting, we also vote no on the following bill, which may or may not repeal this bill. If we were to vote on that, I'd still rather have this bill in place so that the senators who aren't able to make it in person would be able to participate. Could I have Rules Committee comment on what their ideas on that would be?
I would say that if we were to have a special session, Rules Committee would move very quickly to try and consider the bill before that special session so that we would be prepared for that.
Okay, thank you. I yield.
Senator Lona.
So, when Rules Committee proposed this solution, what was the technology going to look like for that hybrid solution? Would it be displayed for everyone in the room to see, the different senators?
Okay, I can try and answer that question if that's all right. So you and I think we would just copy what they did before they moved to full online, where they had a Zoom call. We would probably use a WebEx call because that's the premium account we have. And everybody is required to be on it, whether you're in person or not. You raise your hand in that if you would like to be recognized, and that's what we use instead of placards, so it's even Stevens between the different groups. And we would mute the speakers here if you are in person talking, and you would talk into your computer mic and unmute yourself. So that's what you and I did, and the process seems successful, at least there.
Okay, this solution actually doesn't seem like a bad one. I think we can get creative with our technologies in that we can all still be in person and perhaps have the senators that aren't available come in person somehow. I reference like the game show solutions that they're doing now where they have audiences that are displayed but hosts are still in person. And I don't know if I feel like we can get creative with our technologies. I just don't know if as Rules Committees, you've considered all technologies and all different solutions that we can go about it. But I actually don't think that this is a bad solution. And like I said, I think it's just, we're only limited with the technologies that we have, but if we could figure out what we can do on a tech standpoint, then this actually wouldn't be a bad solution. And if it doesn't work out, then we could propose a new act by Rules Committee. So I think I would be voting yes.
All right. Senator Pfeiffer.
Yeah, I'd just like to say I'd be in favor of not passing this bill now and having the Rules Committee look at it and pick whatever they want, and then having the special session sometime before next week, and then having all of our senators here through proxy or however we choose to do it for next week's meeting. So I yield my time.
There's been a call to question on the bill and a second. Any objection? Okay, we will now move into a roll call vote on the bill. If I say yes would be to adopt these rules starting when the bill is signed. No would be to reject the rules proposed. Adegarla. Edvate. Anderson. Bender. Booma. Brown. Emery. Fahim. Grant. Gonzalez. Hayes. Hovey. Kloptotowskis. Lau. Lewis. Lona. Ludwig.
No.
Mass. Pfeiffer. Simano. Schulte. Simonson. Springer. Stenzel. Samuel. And Young. Okay. 8 to 14 to 4. Okay, with a vote of 8 to 14 to 4, the bill fails. We will now move on to 2020-2-004Y, the Chapter 4 rewrite, and that is with Senator Mass.
All right, so this bill was presented last week. As previously discussed, this is something that then Senator Ludwig and I worked on at the end of last session before we all went home. It changes some of the procedures that Senate uses. A lot of them are just clarifications that the Rules Committee had previously proposed during committee meetings that we wanted to put into a bill. For example, we currently have no rules about open forum. So open forum exists nowhere in our rules, so it's the presumption of Rules Committee that it's probably just a program put on by the speaker that happens to happen every week, and we have no rules actually governing how it functions. So like that's in the bill. There's a couple other things like that Rules Committee just saw as corrections that needed to be addressed in order to prevent further confusion in the future. The only big significant change that would significantly change the way Senate works is the changing of the periods of debate. And what all that does is it follows the practice of the Iowa legislature, where whoever wrote the bill gets the first chance to introduce it, and then they get the opportunity at the end to make final closing arguments for the bill. Anyone can make arguments in the middle, but it just gives the author the first and the last opportunity instead of just randomly whenever they feel like it in the middle. There's some significant advantages to that. Currently, sometimes on legislation, authors will continually move themselves down in order to get the last opportunity to speak on the bill, but this now gives them the chance to make final arguments on it. It further clarifies just the rules of exactly what the periods of debate look like with that and all of those sort of things. If anyone has any questions, I would be glad to answer them, but with that, I will yield.
Vice Speaker Gonzalez.
Yeah, so just looking at it, my question, I guess, is, or I guess just one off the bat. So if there are several authors of the bill, would the primary author speak on it, or would each author get 5 minutes?
It would be the primary author.
Okay, awesome. And then just the last clause, the 4.9.6. So would the vice speaker tell them how the amendment should be sent to them? Or can you clarify that?
So that's a current bylaw that was just moved into the periods of debate section because we thought it made more sense there. So that just clearly says the vice speaker decides what the proper format is. If it's a complicated enough amendment that the vice speaker felt it should be in writing, the vice speaker could require that. It's just a way to make your life easier, especially for long, complicated amendments. Kind of like the one we just saw. You know, if you felt like you need the actual text, you can require that.
Okay, awesome. Thank you so much. I yield.
Senator Pfeiffer. Okay.
Call the question.
It's been a call to question and a second. Is there any objection? Okay, then seeing no objection, we'll move into a roll call vote on the bill. Sorry, what was that? Okay. Adagarla. Edvate. Anderson. Bender. Booma. Brown. Emery. Fahim. Grant. Gonzalez. Hayes. Hovey. Klaptatauskas. Lau. Lewis. Lona. Ludwig.
Yes.
Mass. Pfeiffer. Samanu. Schulte. Simonson. Springer. Stenzel. Samuel. And Young. How many was that? Okay, with a vote of 24 to 0 to 2, the bylaw change has been approved. Now move into new business. Under new business, we have 2020-2-006Y, a persistent sunset clause in Chapter 17, and that is to Senator Advait.
Title?
Move to consider as read.
Okay, so this is, so when the changes to Chapter 17 were put in, the language saying that all the changes expire was in the bill, not in the chapter itself. So if anyone makes amendments to Chapter 17, those amendments don't expire at the end of the semester. That is a technical flaw, and this fixes that by adding a line at the very end of the chapter saying everything in this chapter, including set clause, expires at the end of the semester. And then if we want to extend that, we can extend that as we see fit. Yeah, if you have any questions of intent, I'd be happy to take them. Otherwise, you'll see this next week.
Are there any questions of intent? Okay, seeing none, see the bill next week. We'll have 2020-2-007Y, establishing a campus affairs committee with Speaker Ludwig.
Title? Cool. So, yep, this is the bill establishing the Campus Affairs Committee that's the committee that I talked to you all about at the beginning of the year. This just sets up the outline for the committee and puts into the bylaws. Seating or choosing a chair and seating members would come later. This is something I'm really interested in, so if anybody here has questions about the committee, why I'm creating it, I think I've talked about that before, but if there are any questions, please come talk to me or to any of the co-sponsors who have also taken a great interest in this. So yeah.
Are there any questions of intent? Then seeing none, see you next week. 2020-2-008Y, streamlining Chapter 7 and adding pandemic protections. And that is with Senator Advait.
Hello again, everybody. Title? Hello again, everybody. This bill was spurred on by me reading through Chapter 7, which describes Senate committees. 7.2 is committee structure. The first bullet point under that talks about the Student Initiatives Committee. Why? Who knows? Because that should be in the section for the Student Initiatives Committee, but for some reason it's in the general section. Aside from that, the adding pandemic protections part of this just fixes the Bylaw 7.3.1 that I mistakenly tried to waive at the end of last meeting, and we couldn't. So it would basically fix that little issue. Another thing the bill does at the very end is move Public Relations Committee out of the Senate Committee section and move it into the Cabinet section, because Public Relations, as it is right now, functions as a committee of the Cabinet. It has a Cabinet chair, and it really doesn't serve a Senate function. So a lot of the members on Rules Committee, I've talked to them about this, and we all agree there's really no good reason to keep a committee under Senate committees unless it's considering Senate business, which Public Relations doesn't really do. That's about it. Questions of intent?
Are there any questions of intent? Then seeing none, we'll see you next week. We have 2020-2-009Y, virtual meeting rules with Senator Mass.
Title. Thank you. So this is a bill I alluded to earlier, and thank you to Vice President Schrader for mentioning the 12th edition of Robert's Rules. Conveniently enough, the 12th edition includes an appendix related to rules for virtual meetings, and they're all optional rules depending upon the type of virtual meeting that you will be having. Rather timely by the authors of the Roberts Editing Committee, as a result of the pandemic, they decided to add this in since they were coming out with a new edition anyway. So what this bill is it takes those recommended rules and adapts them to what sort of virtual meeting we would be having, and then puts them in our bylaws so that they would be in effect. It answers a lot of questions, like, for example, can the chair mute someone if they have annoying noises coming into their mic? Technically, under Roberts, the chair should never try and silence a member of the assembly, but, I mean, surely, since it's causing a disruption to the meeting, they should be able to. It answers questions like that. So most of this was written by professional parliamentarians, which, yes, that is an actual job, and you can actually get certified as one, I learned. But much smarter people than me wrote most of this bill. I just substitute in language so that it applies more particularly to our situation. So with that, I'll be happy to yield to any questions of intent.
All right, any questions? Then seeing none, we'll see the bill next week. 2020-2-010Y, Chapter 17, Amendment allowing for temporary proxy voting, with the bill's co-sponsor, Senator Advait.
So, title? Unfortunately, Senator Weathers is still in quarantine, but this is the much talked about proxy voting bill. I think we've been over this as a body pretty much tonight, so.
All right, any questions of intent? Okay, then seeing none, we'll see this at our next scheduled meeting. 2020-2-011F, Crew Club funding with Senator Bender.
Title? Just a funding bill. We'll see you at Finance Committee, so. Yeah.
Any questions of intent for Senator Bender? Then seeing none, see the bill next week. Moving on to 2020-2-012F, Trend Magazine with Senator Bender.
Title? Is that England? Okay. Yeah, another funding bill. See you at Finance Committee.
Okay, if there are any questions, then seeing none, we'll see you next week. 2020-2-013F, Student Government Office Assistant Line Item Transfer with Senator Bender again.
Yep, another thing that we're title. Yeah, another thing we will talk about. Finance.
All right, any questions of intent for Senator Bender? Then seeing none, we'll see the bill next week. We have exhausted the orders for the day. We will move into closing announcements. If you have closing announcements, please raise your placard. Senator Bender.
If anybody's seen my AirPods in the office and possibly picked it up, just let me know. That'd be cool. Thank you.
Senator Springer.
I guess I just want to, if this is like what we need to do to get that special meeting, like, professionally set up.
Yes, so I'll try and give some information on that as my duty as the chair, I guess, to inform that Speaker Ludwig has the ability to call a special meeting, as does if enough members of the body sign a petition for one, that would also create a special meeting.
Okay, so I don't need to make a motion or anything. Speaker Ludwig can just
Right.
have that
Both of those things would happen outside of a Senate meeting.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Senator Hovey.
I just wanted to reiterate that tomorrow, WebEx, 5 p.m., Student Initiatives Committee meeting to discuss the COVID-19 resolution. Bring all of your fun opinions, and that's all for me.
IT Director Khan.
Hi, everyone. Congrats on the senators from this week and past week and confirmed, as well as cabinet members. As you may recall, I sent out an email asking y'all to get your profile set up so it show up in the directory. Congrats to the 3 people that have done it so far. So it's going great. But I'm going to send out another email probably tonight and then another one next week. Just reminding y'all to do that. If you could please get that done, that would be fantastic. Thank you.
Director of Student Advocate Stanley.
Okay, real quick, can I have all the UROC senators come talk to me after the meeting? And I'd like to yield my time to a member of the public.
Don't know if this is according to Roberts, the 12th version, but hello.
No
My name is
worries.
Josh Hanyang. A few of you may know me as a senator from last year. I represented the Ivy College of Business along with my boy Jack Bender. It's really good to be back here hearing debate, even though things are a lot different with COVID this year. And really just enjoying to be here. Hopefully, hoping to be seated next week as a UROC senator. But tonight, I just wanted to talk to you as a student, and more specifically as a student who appreciates the arts here at Iowa State. You may have known during the last week that Director of Athletics Jamie Pollard released a letter out due to not having fans in Jack Trice this year for the football season and the financial implications that causes and the deficit that athletics has to cover. One of the recommendations that Director Pollard had for Iowa State and for President Winterstein was to temporarily, at least for the time, if not indefinitely, shut down C.Y. Stevens Auditorium. And C.Y. Stevens Auditorium, for me, has a lot of personal meaning, and for a lot of people around campus has a lot of personal meaning. I first came to Iowa State in 2010 as a middle schooler for an honor choir here, and we sang right in C.Y. Stevens Auditorium. A couple of years later, I was up here for touring acts and various different events. You know, continued to learn what Iowa State was and enjoy the campus, including that part of it. The Iowa State Center is a place where new students really get to feel like they're part of the Iowa State community for the first time. Destination Iowa State in a normal year is held there. That's one of the greatest events for new students to get connected to their peers on campus. Bottom line is, in a time where we are becoming more disconnected from each other because of social distancing, because of the health practices that we have, we must not forget that there will be a day, hopefully, where we can come back together and have these sort of events. And I really hope that President Winterstein and the administration, and that all of you are hearing my message when I say that there are so many students that this one building, no matter how financially, I guess, negative or costly it may be, has a lot of intrinsic value to them, even if they didn't go to Iowa State, even if they're not a student yet. So just keep that in mind. I would love to, hopefully in the future, talk to you about that. That is one of the things that I have a lot of people who I hope to get connected with as a potential UROC senator to bring that issue to the forefront. But for now, just thanks for your time and have a good night.
Okay, so not allowed to yield closing announcements to different people, so we'll just not do that again. Sorry, Josh. Senator Advait.
So I don't see Speaker Ludwig's placard up, so I suppose this week's lectures update is coming from me. No? What? Okay, cool. So congratulations to Speaker Ludwig for being elected co-chair, or the new co-chairs, and also congratulations to all the new members of the Committee on Lectures. I believe Director Seth and Senators. I don't have the names in front of me. Oh, Senators, what the, yep, Hurley, Brown, and Campbell. That's not a senator, but Julia Campbell too. Moving on, the Committee on Lectures. This has been quite a radical change for us. Most of our lectures used to be in person. So we can't do that obviously anymore. So we're moving on to something of a blended plan of having online lectures as well as sponsoring lectures at other institutions. For example, we'll be sponsoring the Story County Mental Health Expo, I think either this week or next week. I don't remember what the exact date is. Number two, thank you to Senator Klapostowskis for bringing up the virtual issues. I know this is it's a big representation issue, and I hope we can figure out a solution to that. And lastly, yes, as Chair Hovey said, the SI meeting is tomorrow. We're still figuring out how to send out invitations to people. I think what we're going to do is you'll just get a link to the WebEx meeting through the Senate listserv. And for members of the public, we're thinking of putting up a link to join the meeting through the Student Government Instagram or something of that sort. And if you want to know more about that, you can meet Chair Hovey, or I'll try to answer your questions too after the meeting.
Senator Young.
Just a quick plug for while we're trying to create or come up with a solution for virtual/hybrid meetings in the future, if that would be a possibility, to reach out to the GPSS, obviously the Graduate Professional Student Senate leaders, because they have been really successful in leading meetings virtually, and I think they could be a great resource for if you have any questions regarding that.
Okay, then I will go. Yeah, as it comes to online meetings, I have spent a fair bit of effort researching how to do those, how to do hybrid meetings. I think unless the bylaws specify otherwise, I feel like I have to figure out how to do it, so I'm doing my best. But I think that it will certainly be less than what it is now, but as the body, you have the ability to decide if that's worth the trade-off. The trade-off of adding more people to the debate possibly and that sort of thing. But I will do my best to create a successful environment no matter what form that takes. A quick point about abstentions. So bills pass or don't pass based off of the yes votes. The abstentions don't take you out of the pool, so it just counts basically as a no in terms of how votes are counted. So don't abstain from a bill just because you may be unsure, but really just abstain from a bill if you have a personal conflict or that sort of thing, because it is basically just a no. So if you were leaning yes and then abstained, you just really voted no, because I only count the yeses when it comes to the votes required for bills to pass. And I think I wanted to mention that I saw a lot of people on their phones. I think a lot of people doing non-student government related work on their laptops. That is prohibited under our bylaws. If you don't like that rule, please vote to change it. But I believe that our Vice Speaker Gonzalez is in charge of enforcing that, and I would be interested in that being enforced further. We had the president of the university here, and a lot of people were not engaged. We're looking into their screens, and I think that sends a bad message to what we're about and what we're standing for as student government. So please refrain. If you're going to be here, be engaged. If we're online, still be engaged. That was something the UNI Vice President mentioned, was they had a really hard time when people were on the video call of just them doing other things, or you'd call their name to vote and they wouldn't have the speaker on. So let's just not do that. Let's be professionals about it, and we'll do the best that we can together. So that's what I have, Vice Speaker Gonzalez.
Hi, friends. I hope you're having a good week number 4. So just some updates on the mentor-mentee program. We are seeing some new senators come in. So if I speak to you, just know that you might get a new mentor. Might get a new mentee. We'll see how that goes. And just a reminder to please send me an email if you meet with your mentor-mentee. I will not count it in casual conversation. I will not count it if you snap me it, text me it. Absolutely not. Please email it to me just so that we can keep accountability records accurate. And I hope you have a great rest of your week. That's all.
Howdy. So, couple things. First, special meeting. I'm going to send out a when to meet later tonight. I'm just going to ask you all to fill out with your availability over the next couple days and the weekend. So that'll be going out. Please fill it out quickly so that we can schedule the meeting and I can give you the date, send you out the packet, which will just be, of course, the one bill. Fill that out quickly so we can get to it. Moving on from that, as Senator Mass and Vice President Schroeder pointed out, the 12th edition of Robert's Rules is out. So if you really want to dig through that mundane document of a million different rules, I encourage you to do that. I think we're getting 2 copies in the Senate office, hopefully sometime this week. So if you want to go dig through that, I think it's 3 pages shorter. So they managed to shorten the book, but it's about 500 pages of just pure fun. So go through and flip through if you have free time. Lastly, Senator Advait touched on this a little bit. Just going to give you guys all a little bit of a lectures update. As he mentioned, I'm on the committee. I'm one of the co-chairs. I think the lectures program is just a really awesome thing that we have here at Iowa State. We have a really unique structure compared to how other universities do it. At other universities, students don't have as much of a say about what comes to the campus, and they also just generally don't bring as many awesome and unique events as we do. So we are sponsoring the Story County Expo. That is on September 14th at 7. The link is on the lectures series website if you go there. And then there's also another lecture titled Innovation in Energy with Robert Picconi on the 18th of September from noon to 1:30, and that link is also on the lectures website. I encourage you to go watch. We fund this program, so it's our money. So go out and get your money's worth. With that, go Cyclones. Move to adjourn.
Any objection? All right, we're adjourned.